What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was hated by everyone but loved by a beautiful dragon princess who saw his pain? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Hizuran Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. Known primarily for his title as the Kami no Shinobi, as well as his training of a genin team that would later become known throughout the shinobi world as the Densetsu no Sannin. However, if one were to see him at that moment, they would not even think about his life achievements and instead focus on the huge amount of paperwork on his desk. Minato, you cruel bastard, you just had to take the secret to beating this damned paperwork to the grave with you. Sarutobi thought, while signing and stamping another form, setting down, and picking up another, before grimacing at the writing on it. Motion to have Naruto Uzumaki placed into the custody of Danzo Shimura for training. Denied. Placing his signature on the area to deny the motion, he placed it into one of three bins surrounding him, the largest being the in bin, the second, and the middle one, being the denied motions, while the third and by far smallest pile was the approved documents. Picking up the next paper, Sarutobi read it over, and couldn't help the sigh that escaped his mouth from the writing. Now this is one request I'm definitely not going to approve of. Were Sarutobi's thoughts, and just as he signed off on the denied portion, a loud disturbance from the other side of his office doors caught his attention. Hey, what do you think you're doing here, you damn brat? Get lost, Sarutobi's secretary shouted, drawing his gaze to the direction it was coming from. There's only one person that comes to see me at this time, and that's also the same person my secretary hates. Sarutobi thought, while listening for the voice of the person he thought would respond. Listen, lady, I need to speak with Hokage-sama at once. And, since I'm technically a shinobi of the village, I don't take orders from you, civilian. Responded a voice he knew too well. Naruto, Sarutobi thought, while rising from his desk and walking to the door, only stop as he put his hand on the knob. But he never calls me Hokage-sama, so something must have happened. Well, I don't care if you are a shinobi, you're still just some worthless brat to me. So take your little girlfriend there, and get out before I summon Anbu to remove you. This caught Sarutobi's attention. Girlfriend? Not wanting to take any chances on Naruto getting upset and causing a major scene, Sarutobi wrenched open the door, and saw what was unfolding on the other side. His secretary, a middle-aged civilian, more than likely only working the position in hopes of gaining some fake sense of authority, was yelling at two people. One, Sarutobi recognized by the bright blonde hair, as a boy who had become something like a surrogate grandson to him, but the other, the female with long, bright pink hair, and a familiarly strange tail-like object sticking out her lower back, was someone he hadn't seen in many years. Shina, why do you feel the need to harass one of my ninja, and deny him an audience with his leader? Sarutobi asked, while glaring down at the woman, who was trying her best to disappear from the man's sight, but failing miserably. Hokage-sama, I was merely trying to keep this disruptive influence from interfering with your daily work. She tried to reason, but it was blatantly obvious that her words were a very terrible lie. Of course you were, Sarutobi responded, his voice so laden with sarcasm, a deaf person would have heard it. Naruto-kun, why don't you and your guest join me in my office? And no more meetings for today, Shina, I'll be busy for the rest of the day with some other important business. Yes, Hokage-sama, Shina responded, before turning back to her own paperwork, but not before throwing one more glare at Naruto. I still say you should have fired her a long time ago, Oji-san. Naruto said, after he and Lala had entered the office and the doors had been closed. Yes, and I agree, but as it stands, she does have some skills left in time management, but we can leave the argument for another time. Sarutobi responded, before turning his gaze back to Naruto and Lala. Lala Dono, it's so good to see you again after so many years. The older man said, while bowing to the girl who he knew was royalty, only to hear her giggling in response. You've gotten so much older, Chuko-saru. Lala responded, while covering her mouth with her hand to try and stifle the giggles, but it wasn't working very well. Sarutobi had a sweat drop on the side of his head from the comment, while Naruto was holding his own laugh in as well, if his shaking frame was any indication. Well, I'm glad to see you're still as honest as you were the last time we met. Sarutobi finally managed to say, after regaining his composure, and Lala and Naruto had finally stopped laughing. "So, I take it that you recall everything now, Naruto-kun?" Sarutobi questioned the blonde of the group. "Yeah, both seals have been removed, and I'm slowly but surely remembering everything." Naruto responded, "I'm glad to hear that, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry that it had to happen like that." Sarutobi said to his surrogate grandson, while bowing his head sadly. "Don't be," Naruto said, drawing Sarutobi's gaze to Naruto, who had his face set in a pure mask of concentration. "If you and Kyuubi hadn't sealed away my mental and physical abilities when you had the chance, I know the councils would have forced my execution. So, what was done was the lesser of two evils." What are you two talking about?" Lala's voice suddenly cut into their conversation, making both men realize they had been talking about information that the third person there had no idea about. "Oh, sorry Lala-chan, I forgot that this happened after you left." Naruto apologized, while sheepishly scratching the back of his head. "Well, to explain what we were just talking about, you need to first understand what happened after you and your father left the village 8 years ago. It wasn't long after your father and I had finalized the marriage agreement between yourself and Naruto-kun that certain members of this village found out about it." Sarutobi began explaining. "They sought to remove the agreement to marry you two, but thanks to a loophole in the agreement, only one of the 4 people mentioned in the document could alter its function." "4 people?" Lala asked, before she took a thoughtful pose. One Naruto had to restrain himself from yelling, "Kawaii," about when she took it. "Papa, Shuko Saru, Naruto-kun, and me," she said after a few seconds. "Correct. Since you and your dad were gone from the village, that left only 2 people who could change the contract, myself and Oji-san." Naruto continued. "And between the two of us, the councils thought I would have been the easier to manipulate of us, so they forcibly summoned me to a late-night meeting and began threatening in hopes of it being enough to alter the agreement." "But why would they do that?" Lala asked, suddenly curious about the council's apparent hatred for Naruto. "Naruto-kun is a well-known person in the village, but the problem is that the reasons behind his popularity, and I use that word lightly, is because of his significance to saving this village many years ago." Sarutobi began explaining. "You see, 16 years ago, on the day Naruto was born, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, a massive fox demon, attacked the village, destroying much and taking countless lives. That all ended, however, when my successor, and now predecessor, the Yondaime Hokage, gave his life to imprison the Kitsune, using his own son as the jail cell. Sadly, when I returned to office after the passing of the Yondaime, I found out that many of the council members had already learned the truth about Naruto-kun, and had begun spreading lies through the village." "Lies about what?" Lala asked, but seeing the downed look on Naruto's face, she slowly began understanding what the older man might have meant. That he wasn't the jailer for the Kyuubi, but was actually the demon that was responsible for nearly destroying the village. Many began calling for his death, and a slightly smaller amount were calling to turn him into the village's prized weapon of war. Sarutobi explained, while Lala gasped at this. "I placed a law into effect, stating that anyone caught passing on information about Naruto's involvement in the defeat of the Kyuubi would be put to death immediately. But that still hasn't stopped the older generation from spreading their hatred about him, warning their children to stay away from him. And this was the main reason behind their plans to annul the marriage arrangement between us," Naruto said, saying his first piece since the backstory to his life began. "They felt that as the Kyuubi brat, as they called me many times during that meeting, it was too great an honor for me to have been engaged to a princess of a large empire. Granted, they didn't know the truth behind your father's empire, but they knew that he was a very important king. So, they felt the need to change the marriage agreement, instead hoping to force you into marrying someone they felt was more worthy of it." "And what happened afterwards?" Lala questioned, her mind still trying to wrap around the problems Naruto had been forced to deal with for years on end. "Well, their normal threats, namely executing Naruto-kun, throwing him in jail for life, or banning him from our shinobi program, were mainly ignored, and all by Naruto-kun himself. No matter what they threatened, from what my contacts in the meeting told me, he wouldn't back down, saying he said, 'I would rather die than let Lala-chan be married to some crazy pig the councils had picked out.'" Sarutobi explained, which caused Lala to look at Naruto with a happy smile on her face. while Naruto was looking away from her, a heavy blush on his face at the memory of standing against the councils. But many of the more vocal members of the council, who aren't known to be too bright, became angry at this point, and decided on a different approach. They decided to comment that if Naruto didn't bow to their wishes and alter the contract, then even if he did marry you, they would make sure your life was as terrible as they could make it, even hinting at the possibility of you having an accident. That's when I lost it. Naruto took over, drawing Lala's gaze to him. After hearing them threaten you, I blanked out, and the next thing I knew, Oji-san was restraining me, and the council chambers had been reduced to a wreck. He ordered the council dismissed, and took me back to my apartment to sleep, since I had passed out after the incident had ended. The next morning, we were informed about what had happened in the chamber, about how I had seemingly tapped into some latent transformation, which many on the councils linked to the Kyuubi. It was about then that the Kyuubi contacted us and explained that the power I had displayed was a special gift from the Kyuubi, which as it so happens, was a more advanced level of what Kyuubi had been teaching me. But that's when the councils reared their ugly heads again, since one of my most trusted Enbu informed me of another meeting being held without my authorization. This one was being used to decide on a punishment for Naruto, since he had accidentally killed several people during the meeting from the night before. Ironically, as it was, those people he had killed were some of the more vocal ones about what might happen to you if the marriage had happened. Sarutobi continued. As it stood, anything that I could think of would have backfired, since trying to ignore the punishments would have called my impartiality on the matter into question, which could have forcibly removed me from office. Luckily, it was the Kyuubi who had come up with a punishment, if you could call it that. A double restrainer system was put into place, limiting my physical and mental abilities. Naruto kicked in. Think of it as a set of locks on my potential, which held the abilities back, but still took all the training I was doing and fueled them to new levels. But, as a special, unknown to most, feature, the locks had a special unlocker system, which would be triggered by separate events happening. The locks on my physical powers could only be undone if someone had linked my name to the Kyuubi's, while the lock on my mental abilities would only unlock if I ever saw you again, Lala-chan. So, you've been living for the past 8 years, hindered from achieving any prowess, because of me? Lala asked, after several minutes of silence, while glancing sadly at Naruto, before shifting her gaze to floor, as if in shame. I wonder if he actually hates me. Lala thought, but any such thoughts were stopped, when Naruto grabbed her arm and pulled her into a strong hug, surprising her by his action. Lala, don't think, even for a second, that you were the cause of this. Naruto said, while hugging her tightly. The fault rests solely on the shoulders of those ignorant council members for trying to take away something they had nothing to do with. I don't blame you for this at all, and I want you to know that if it meant keeping you safe from those manipulative bastards, I'd gladly go through that all over again. Lala's eyes began to water, hearing the pure honesty of Naruto's words, and feeling the affection behind them. She wrapped her arms around Naruto and hugged him in return, tears slowly falling from her eyes. The two of them stayed like that for a while, before Naruto pulled back slightly, and looked Lala in the eye. I'd gladly give up anything and everything I had, if it meant that you wouldn't have to face a single bit of trouble in this village. Naruto finished. A kind smile on his face, which stayed there until Lala leaned forward slightly, placing her forehead to his, and sighing out loud. Oh, Naruto-kun, she cooed softly, her eyes closed and a smile on her face. It's just like all those years ago when I first met you. You were so kind to me, not letting my royal title keep you from being my friend, and showing me kindness. I didn't realize when I was younger, but I had fallen for you the moment I met you, and now, I'm glad my father set up this marriage between us. Lala-chan, Naruto whispered, as he kept staring at her beautiful face, which became even more so when she opened her dazzling green eyes, and that's when Naruto surprised both of them. He tilted his head forward slightly, planting a short, chaste kiss on her lips, before he pulled his head back after realizing what he had done. But, to his surprise, Lala stopped him from pulling away completely, and instead, pulled him back into another kiss, this one slightly longer, but it was still chaste. After a moment or so, both teens pulled away, more from a lack of air, and smiled happily at each other. Ahem. Sarutobi coughed out, drawing the young couple's attention to the older man, who had a happy smile on his face. I hate to stop you two, but we still have some important business to finish up. He then gained a slightly perverted grin. Once we're done, I'm sure you two can catch up as much as you want. Oh, okay, Naruto responded, with a slight blush on his face, which Lala mirrored as well, before the two separated, Naruto taking a seat in front of the Hokage's desk, while Lala happily sat down on Naruto's lap, as the blonde wrapped his arms around her waist, Lala leaning back and resting her head on his shoulder. Alright, the first thing that needs to be said is that as of now, thanks to you entering the shinobi forces, you, Naruto, no longer have to worry about the civilian council hassling you. Sarutobi began, which Naruto gained a slightly satisfied smirk about. Also, this means that several shinobi stores, which before you could not use, are now open for you to use, and as a side note, most of the owners have no problem with you. Second, since you have achieved the rank of genin, part of your father's last wishes can now be fulfilled. What do you mean by that? Naruto asked, while eyeing the Hokage curiously. Before your father died from the sealing process, he informed me of a small apartment that he had set aside, which would be accessible to you when you achieved the rank of genin. Also, he informed me that it had several special features on the living space, but he never got the chance to tell me what they were. Sarutobi responded, causing an understanding expression to fill the blonde's face, as the old man slid a key across the desk, which Lala grabbed and handed to Naruto. And, as for the last piece of information, I felt the need to inform you that there will be a 1-month break period before the genin team announcements are made, so you have some free time to get your skills back up to snuff. Alright, that will definitely help right now. Last thing I want to have happen is accidentally hurting someone with a stray attack. Naruto responded, which Sarutobi nodded his head to. Was there anything else, Oji-san? No, that will pretty much cover the important matters for today, so you two are free to go. Sarutobi responded. Well, Lala, I think that before we head to the new apartment, we should probably stop and buy you some more clothes. We can't have you wearing my hand-me-downs all the time. Naruto said, to which Lala nodded, but before she could say anything, a new voice suddenly sounded, coming from the window. Lala-sama, I found you. The voice said, and when the three people turned to the source of it, two of them were shocked at what they saw. It was a small object, only about a foot or so tall, that looked reminiscent of a human, with cream-colored skin, and an oval-shaped head, swirl-like eyes, its body seemingly covered by a large shirt, with a red tie from its neck, and strange, bat-like wings on its back, easily as big as its whole body. Ah, Peek! Lala happily cried out, as she embraced the small creature, holding it tightly in her arms. I'm so glad to see you, but how did you find me? I traced the signature from your Pion Warp-kun, and then scanned for your biometrics. The now-named Peek responded, before its small head turned to see the other two occupants of the room. Lala-sama, who are these two strange people with you? Strange? Naruto and Sarutobi thought at the same time, a tick mark on their heads at the comment. Ah, the older man is Sarutobi, the leader of this village, but I just call him Chuko-saru. The other one, the blonde boy, is Naruto-kun, the one I came here to meet and marry. Lala responded, while turning to the two men, Peek still held in her arms. I'd like you to meet Peek. She's an all-purpose costume robot I invented. Costume robot? Sarutobi questioned, while turning his gaze to Naruto, a questioning look on his face. One that Naruto shrugged his shoulders at, showing he hadn't heard anything about this at all. At that particular moment, Naruto's reactions kicked in and he lifted his hand, catching an object that would have hit his face, before taking a closer look at it and seeing it was the shirt Lala had been wearing. Lala-chan, why are you stripping? Naruto asked, though he kept his voice level low, so as not to let the annoying secretary on the other side of the door hear it. Instead of answering, Lala bent downward, pulling off the shorts she had been wearing, and leaving her completely bare, before tossing the shorts over her shoulder, which surprisingly hit the Hokage in the face, covering up his eyes, and the slight nosebleed he had gained from Lala's show. Peek, I'll leave it to you. Lala chirped happily, while facing the small robot, who was hovering at chest level to her. Understood. Peek responded enthusiastically, before her small frame began to glow. Transform. Dress form. Peek called out, as a bright flash of light engulfed Lala, which illuminated several tendrils which were the same color as Peek, which tightly wrapped around Lala's body, before merging into a new outfit. The outfit that Lala was now wearing made her look like a larger-sized Peek, with a large hat shaped like Peek's head on top of her head, and her tail sticking out the back for all to see. It was also at this point that Sarutobi had managed to regain enough sense to pull the pair of shorts away from his face, and though he was disappointed that he had missed any more of the show, he hid it well, especially when Naruto turned his stony gaze to him. "Lala-sama, is it too tight?" "No, perfect like always." Lala responded, as she twirled a bit, showing that the clothes were indeed form-fitting, clinging to her body almost like a second skin. "Naruto-kun, do you like it?" Well, it definitely suits you," Naruto managed to say, after a moment of silence. Coughing slightly, Sarutobi once again returned the group's attention to himself. "Well, I'm glad that you have some other clothes to wear now, Lala Dono, but I think that particular outfit might stand out a little too much in the village." "Oh, really?" Lala asked, her tone and expression showing complete surprise at this comment. "Yeah, that definitely would be a problem. The tail alone would definitely draw attention, but the outfit would be an even bigger attention grabber." Naruto agreed, his eyes closed, arms crossed, and his head nodding in agreement, before turning his gaze to Lala. "Peek, can you take on any form of clothing?" "Hi, I just need to see it once, and I can easily replicate it." Peek's voice responded, the source of it being the hat on Lala's head. A rustling sound came from behind the two, and when they turned their heads, they found the Hokage rummaging through his desk drawer, before withdrawing his hand, which now held a photograph. "This picture was taken back when I was in my prime. The woman standing beside me was my wife, Bawako. I think the outfit she was wearing in this photo would suit you, Lala Dono," Sarutobi said, while handing her the photo, which both Naruto and Lala took the chance to look at. Standing on the left was a younger-looking Sarutobi. His hair and goatee was a dark brown color, while his body was adorned with his usual cage robes. Beside him stood a lovely woman with long black hair, which was tied into a ponytail at the back of her head. Her outfit consisted of a fishnet undershirt, with a deep red kimono top over it, which was missing the sleeves from the elbows down. Her lower body had a pair of tight black shorts which went to a few inches above the knees, while her feet were covered with the standard shinobi sandals. Peek, what do you think?" Lala asked, while glancing up to her hat. "That can be done. Transform," Peek called out, once again engulfing Lala in a flash of light, which soon settled down, revealing Lala in the same outfit that the woman in the picture was wearing, the only variation being the small pin in her hair just above her forehead, which resembled Peek's face. "Wow," Naruto commented, his mouth gaping at Lala's new look, before shaking his head to clear his thoughts. You look great, Lala-chan." Thank you, Naruto-kun," Lala responded, a light blush adorning her cheeks. "Alright, I need to be getting back to this blasted paperwork, so you two go and see that new apartment of yours," Sarutobi said, while writing down the address to it on a small slip of paper, as well as the names of the stores now open to the young blonde, and passing it to Naruto. "I'll hire a genin team to handle the transfer of your possessions to your new home, Naruto, so don't worry about that." "Right, appreciate it, Oji-san," Naruto responded, as he opened the door, first letting Lala go before him, before stopping at the slightly opened door and glancing at the desk, which had seemingly been covered with even more paper since the last time he saw it. Oji-san, I hate to question you about it, but why don't you just try a bunchin technique to handle the papers?" For a few seconds, the Sandaime Hokage merely stared at the young blonde with a blank look on his face, before he suddenly smashed his head into the desk, with a loud cry of, "Baka!" After another few seconds of silence and stillness from the Hokage, he lifted his face from the desk and began rubbing his forehead, which was sporting a big red mark now. Oji-san, what was that about?" Naruto asked the elderly Hokage, who just sighed and smiled at Naruto. "That was a punishment for not figuring out something you and your father managed to solve easily," Sarutobi responded, receiving a confused stare from Naruto. "I've spent the better part of both of my reigns as Hokage trying to manage this paperwork, but I could never figure out how to do it. But your father managed to best it, and it seems you inherited his keen mind for problem solving," he finished, before making a hand seal, and in a poof of smoke, 3 cage bunchins appeared, before they quickly began working on the desk full of documents. "Thank you for your assistance, Naruto, and I'll be sure to have the money for completing an S-ranked mission to you soon." S-ranked? Naruto pondered out loud, before sighing. Never mind, I get what you mean. Well, see you later, Oji-san. Naruto finally said, before closing the office door, leaving the old Hokage and his clones to finish up what would normally be a full day's work, with the possibility of staying late, but now it would only be a matter of 1 or 2 hours. With Naruto and Lala. So, after we check out this apartment my dad left us, what say we head to one of these stores Oji-san told me about and see if they have anything for us to wear? Naruto asked Lala, who happily nodded her head. That sounds like fun, Naruto-kun. Lala chirped happily, before glomping the young boy's arm, smashing her impressive bust onto the limb, which caused him to blush lightly. Can you believe that lovely young lady, hugging that abomination? Naruto heard suddenly from the side, an older woman being the source of the comment, which she had said to several other women with her. It's actually a surprise that anyone would want to be around that thing. Another said, but any further comments were stopped by a powerful glare coming from Naruto. Naruto-kun, is something wrong? Lala asked, since she had noticed his glare, but then she saw the direction it was aimed in, and also noticed the group of women who had just recently been gossiping. Don't worry about it, Lala-chan. Naruto responded, while holding her hand tightly in his own. It's been over 16 years, I'm used to it by now. Naruto-kun, Lala said, before she hugged herself to his arm even tighter, as if trying to relay the fact that he wasn't alone, and didn't have to deal with the isolation anymore without any words. Thanks, Lala-chan, Naruto said, while resting his head on top of hers. Sadly, their moment together was short-lived, thanks to another interruption. Oh, Naruto, there you are. A new, female voice, sounded from behind the two, causing Naruto to freeze out of some strangely honed reflex, while Lala glanced first at Naruto, then back at the source of the voice. I've been looking all over for you. Slowly, Naruto turned to face the source of the voice, revealing it to be a woman that looked to be in her mid to late 30s, with long, fiery red hair, and passionate violet eyes. As his gaze landed on the woman, his face became suddenly devoid of emotion, and in an unnaturally calm voice, he spoke, shocking Lala at how restrained he sounded. Namikaze Kushina. Naruto, there's no need to be so formal, not with your Kasan. The now-named Kushina said, while smiling at Naruto, though she found herself having trouble keeping the smile when she saw Naruto's stare hadn't lessened in intensity. Was there something you needed of me, Namikaze-san? Naruto finally said after a few minutes of silence, while Lala glanced confusedly at Naruto, surprised at finding out this woman's relation to Naruto and his distant response to her. Naruto, please, I just want to talk to you. How about you and your friend here come by the Namikaze compound for a little lunch? Kushina tried to reason, while doing her best to keep her smile in place. Sorry, but my friend and I have some important matters to attend to. Naruto returned, using her own classification for Lala to say this, while his tone relayed the feeling that he didn't seem bothered by turning down her request. Turning to face the opposite way of Kushina, Naruto began walking away from the redhead, Lala following beside him, though her confused expression never once left her face. But Naruto's departure was suddenly stopped, this time by Kushina rushing toward the blonde and grabbing hold of his arm. If you would be so kind as to let go of my arm, Namikaze-san. Naruto said calmly, but there was an underlying sense of anger in the young genin's voice. Naruto, please, I know you hate me, and Kami knows you have every right to, but I'm begging you to give me another chance. She said, her tone shaky, showing that she was on the verge of tears as she said these words. That is the one thing I can't do. Naruto replied, before sliding his arm out Kushina's hands, as her grip loosened and she collapsed to her knees, tears slowly making their way down her face. Naruto didn't even spare her a glance as he continued to walk away, Lala trailing after him. Outside Naruto's new apartment, the rest of the trip had been made in an uncomfortable silence, as Lala continued to give short worried glances at Naruto. After reaching the stairs of the apartment building, Naruto finally released a sigh, before stopping in his tracks and turning to Lala. Something on your mind, Lala-chan? Naruto asked, even though he knew exactly she was thinking. It's just, if that woman was really your mother, why would you hate her? Lala questioned, since the mere concept of hating a parent was such a complex puzzle to her. Another sigh left Naruto, before he turned to look toward the Hokage monument, before turning his gaze back to Lala. Because she may have brought me into this world, but she was the main cause behind me almost leaving this world many times. Naruto said, while Lala looked at him with a confused expression. Like you were told earlier, I've been hated and scorned for most of my life because of my involvement in the defeat of the Kyuubi. But while very few people knew the truth behind the ceiling, namely that Kyuubi and I are separate, Kushina was one of the few that knew this. But, since her husband, my father, had perished during the sealing, she began to blame me, since the cause of his death was inside my body. I'm not too sure on the specifics, but sometime shortly after you and your father left the village, just before my abilities were sealed, she approached me trying to seek redemption for what she had allowed to happen to me. I won't go into the details of what she allowed to pass, but I can say that those memories won't ever leave me. Oh, so, you do hate her? Lala asked, as her expression became very saddened at this news. Some part of me does hate her, mostly because she only wants to be a mother to me after all this time, and probably not for the right reasons. Naruto responded. I do know that another part of me forgives her for her misplaced anger, since it was her husband that died that night as well. But while I can forgive her somewhat, I can't fully let go of what happened or forget about it either. Naruto-kun, Lala said, before she hugged herself to his arm again. Thanks, Lala-chan, Naruto said, while smiling down at her. Come on, let's check this place out, and then head out our shopping. Next morning, light streamed through the blinds over the window, and landed directly on Naruto's face, causing the young blonde to awaken from his sleep. As he slowly woke up, Naruto quickly took note of the slight weight pressed onto him, and after opening his eyes slightly, they flew open in shock. Lala was lying on top of him, the blanket he had been using was wrapped around her, but other than that, there wasn't a stitch of clothing on her body. Okay, I know I had her sleep in the main bed, while I took the couch. Naruto thought, while trying to pry his eyes away from the slight rise and fall of Lala's chest when she took a breath. Carefully as he could, Naruto slid himself out from under her, letting Lala rest on the couch itself, and wrapping the blanket fully over her body. Sighing out loud, Naruto stood up straight, and once again took a look around the room of his new apartment. It was a large place, the kitchen of it alone easily being the same size as his old apartment, while the bedroom and living room were easily 3 and 4 times that size respectively. The place had come fully furnished, with a couch, love seat, a coffee table, refrigerator, and a king-size bed, and it was also fully stocked with lots of fresh food. After taking a short look inside the fridge, Naruto managed to see several small seals on the back of machine, which were actually mass storage seals, which explained the availability of the food, as well as its condition. Walking toward the bedroom, Naruto opened the door and saw the bed was a bit messy, indicating someone had been on it at one point. Also, near the headboard, Naruto also noticed the still form of Peak, which Naruto could only guess meant the little robot was sleeping. Turning at the sound of a satisfied moan, Naruto returned his gaze back to where Lala was sleeping, only to see her sitting up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes in a very cute manner. Oh, Naruto-kun, good morning, she said softly, before curling herself backwards and letting out a contented yawn, showing how well she had been sleeping. Good morning, Lala-chan, Naruto said, while turning his gaze away from Lala's form, namely because of the fact that the blanket had fallen away, giving him an unobstructed view of her body. Since you're up, I'll start on making breakfast. You can take a shower while I'm doing that. Hi, Lala cheered out happily, all traces of her former sleepiness now completely gone. Standing up from the couch, and not showing a care in the world at her lack of clothing, she made her way to the bathroom, while Naruto had quickly darted into the kitchen area and busied himself with getting breakfast made up. Geez, I know Lala-chan and I are engaged, but does she have to be so open to letting herself be seen like that? Naruto thought, as he pulled out some eggs, bacon and milk. After turning on the stove, he pulled a pan from the cupboards, got some bread from the pantry and set it in the toaster. While waiting for the toast, he went about cooking the eggs and bacon, making a slightly larger amount than 2 people would need, since his memories of Lala were now easily accessed to him. She's one of the only people, besides Choji, that could actually eat as much, if not more, than me, after all. He reasoned. Once he had finished with preparations, he transferred the bacon and eggs onto plates, and snatched the toast out of the air after it had finished toasting. Setting the food on the table, he remarked at his good timing, since it was at that moment that Lala had finished her shower. Walking to the table, wearing nothing but a soaked towel to cover her figure, Naruto had to force the blush back down at this sight, but Lala seemed completely oblivious to this. "Oh, it looks delicious, Naruto-kun. Itadakimasu," Lala chirped, after setting herself down at one of the chairs, Naruto following her example. As he poured a glass of milk for Lala and them himself, Lala had taken her first bite of the food, and an almost euphoric look overtook her face, indicating she liked the taste. She began to eat at a much more rapid pace, though she never once spilled a bit of food onto the table. "Ah, Gochisu-sama, Lala-chan, hang on a sec," Naruto said, while reaching across the table toward her face. "You had some eggs on you." Naruto finished, while pulling his fingers back, showing a small bit of egg was indeed there, which he popped into his mouth, while Lala blushed slightly. "Ah, thank you, Naruto-kun," Lala said, while glancing down at the table, the light pink tint still there. "So, how about after I finish the dishes and get my shower, we head out to a training ground and see if I can get my chops back up?" Naruto suggested, as he placed his cutlery down onto his plate, and stood up from the table while grabbing Lala's as well. "Oh, I can do the dishes," Lala offered, while standing up as well and holding out her hands to Naruto, waiting for him to give her the plates to wash. "Are you sure?" Naruto asked. "Yes, I would love to," Lala responded, to which Naruto could only nod dumbly and hand her the dishes, before walking to the bathroom to take his own shower. Wow, she is really full of energy, Naruto thought, as he let the water from the shower head wash over him, while scrubbing himself clean. But then again, she was the exact same way back when we were kids, so I shouldn't really be this surprised. Shutting off the water, Naruto opened the bathroom door, and grabbed the nearby towel and began drying off his hair first, but as he finished, an idea struck him. Kyuubi did say my abilities were back, so maybe. Deciding to test it, Naruto concentrated his thoughts on what he wanted to have happen, and finally, he got the desired results. A swirling aura of energy, that only went a few inches away from his body, began flowing around him, effectively throwing the water off his body and evaporating it a split second later. "Ha, I still got it," Naruto contemplated, but then the aura slipped and vanished, causing Naruto to silently curse. "I guess I don't." Sighing out loud, Naruto figured it would take some heavy-duty retraining, if he ever wanted to regain his former abilities. Dropping the towel from his hand, he quickly grabbed his new clothes, and began to put them on. After initially checking out the apartment the evening before, and finding another letter on the counter, Naruto and Lala had gone to one of the closest stores that sold shinobi items, and had went on a spree. It had turned out that inside the letter, Naruto had found a special account set aside for him by his father, which had quite a bit of money on it, which Naruto was grateful for. After a short bit of thought, he had decided that the old orange jumpsuit was not useless. Naruto had gotten some other items, namely several pairs of black shorts that went to his knees, and a couple plain black t-shirts. He had wanted some other, more original clothes, but while the shop could do custom work, they were so backed up with their most recent requests, they wouldn't be able to do anything until the next month. So, he had to settle with the basics, and would wait for the chance to get more specialty clothes at a later time. "Lala-chan, are you ready to go?" Naruto called out, while exiting the bathroom, and closing the door behind him. Naruto managed to find her again, in the bedroom setting on the bed, almost like she was waiting for Naruto. "Well, are you almost ready?" Naruto asked, while noticing she was still not wearing any clothes, though the way she was sitting and facing away from him hid most of her body from his line of sight. "Hi, just a moment," Lala responded, before placing a hand on Peek's head and shaking her gently. "Peek, it's time to wake up," she said softly. "Oh, Lala-sama, forgive me for oversleeping," Peek said, while rubbing where its eyes were, though Naruto idly wondered if a robot could rub sleep from its eyes. "It's okay, but Naruto-kun and I do need to be heading out," Lala said, as she stood up on the side of the bed Peek was closest to, causing Naruto to turn his head away to give her some privacy. "So, if I could have the same outfit as yesterday?" "Roger," Peek called out, as she vanished in a flash of light, and once again, Lala found herself garbed in the clothes that the Sandame had suggested for her. "Okay, I'm ready to go," Lala called out happily, as she got beside Naruto and once again hugged his arm to her impressive chest. "Well, let's get going then." Naruto responded, as the two of them left the apartment. Hokage Monument. So this is where Lala-sama managed to get to? A figure questioned, while he stood atop the Sandame's head, overlooking the entirety of Konoha. Garbing the figure's body was a skin-tight black suit, while multiple pieces of metallic gray armor littered his form. Also, hanging down the figure's back was a long purple cape, which was about touching the ground, and was being supported by the shoulder pieces of the armor. Well, it shouldn't be that hard to find her. As he said this, he pulled out a small device from his belt and flipped it open, which showed a radar of sorts, with a single red dot on it. Leaping from the monument, the figure rushed off in search of his intended search target. Forested area. This is the same place I went to after I had taken the Forbidden Scroll and learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto explained, while Lala was seeing the lush forests of this area. Not many people know about this place, and because of that, we can train in this area without having to worry about any interruptions. Wow, this place is so neat. Lala chirped happily, while spinning around to try and take as much in as she could. Oh, right, I almost forgot. We need to help Naruto-kun awaken his old power. Lala said, as she suddenly stopped, and clapped a closed fist into her other open palm, as if in sudden realization. Right, Naruto said, as he walked a good 20 feet or so from Lala, before spreading his legs to shoulder width apart and clenched his fists at his side. If I can just remember how I tapped into it the first time, I'm sure I'll be able to access it once again. I know you can do it, Naruto-kun. Lala cheered happily, as she sat down in front of the small shack in the clearing. Okay, I tapped into this power for the first time, when those ignorant counselors were threatening Lala-chan. Naruto thought, his eyes closed in concentration, as the memory from that specific event came back to him. Flashback. Demon brat, you better obey our commands and annul the marriage right now. A random councilman, a civilian one at that, yelled out, the target of the yell being a small, 8-year-old Naruto, who even for such a young boy, had a substantial amount of muscle tone. No way, not gonna happen. Naruto shouted back, which only caused the civilians and elders to become even more enraged. We'll ban you from the shinobi program if you continue to deny us. Homura called out, hoping that the blonde's dream of being Hokage could be worked to their advantage. I won't have a reason to be a shinobi anymore, not if Lala-chan isn't there. Naruto responded, angering Homura at his words. You'll be imprisoned for the rest of your life, no matter how long it may be. Another civilian, this one with short cropped black hair, shouted out, but it seemed to have no effect. Or, we could just as easily execute you for trying to defy the councils. He continued, thinking this plan would work better. Big deal, that would just make sure Lala-chan stays out of your hands. Naruto returned, causing the already angry councils to become even more angered. Besides, I'd rather die than let Lala-chan be married to some crazy pig you have set up. Well, if you feel so strongly about this, I guess you will marry her. Another civilian, this one with long pink hair, though it was very dulled, showing years of attempts to keep it looking young. But it would be such a shame if that sweet little girl were to have an accident, wouldn't you say? At this Naruto's eyes widened in panic, before his head dropped down, his bangs covering his eyes. Don't, Naruto began, before he raised his head, causing a gasp to run through the room, namely at the fact that his eyes had become blood red, with slits for the pupils. Don't you dare threaten Lala-chan. Naruto shouted out, as his anger unleashed, the energy surge blowing over the desks in the room, and sent several of the closer counselors flying. Flashback end. That's it, Naruto thought, as he focused on the same feelings of rage he had felt that day, and tried to pull on the already existing power he had. As this happened, Lala was surprised to see Naruto begin yelling out, and a sudden appearance of a large white aura surrounding Naruto's body, and it kept expanding until it was almost 5 feet from his body at every point. After a few moments of it being there, she then began to notice that at random points, there would be a slight bit of red energy that would show up, which would grow stronger each time. Finally, after several moments, the red energy overtook the white, and Naruto's body shifted as well, his muscles seemingly growing, while his hair changed from its usual sun-kissed blonde to a deep crimson color. As the new red aura began to stabilize slightly, Naruto's yell ceased, and he took a deep breath before opening his eyes, surprising Lala by the fact that they were blood red instead of ocean blue. There, it's back, Naruto commented, while flexing his body slightly, trying to get adapted to this new transformation. Wow, Lala said, as she could only stare at Naruto's new form. Naruto-kun, that's so awesome. She continued, as she approached her fiancé and darted around his form, taking in his new appearance with an overly awestruck expression. Yeah, it might be awesome, but it's been such a long time since I used it, I'm having trouble holding this. Naruto said, while glancing at his clenched fist. I guess I should get in some practice. Oh, I can help you. Lala said suddenly, before placing herself in front of Naruto. I've heard from Papa that sparring with another fighter helps both of them increase their skill. So, I'll be your sparring partner. Lala-chan? Naruto began intent on asking if she was sure about this. But, his words stopped when he recalled the sheer amount of physical strength she showed yesterday. Alright, if you're sure. Hi, I'm sure, she responded while clenching her fists, before throwing out a punch aimed at Naruto's chest. Acting quickly, Naruto pushed the incoming fist to his right, while spinning with the attack, and swinging up a leg toward Lala's torso. The kick was stopped, however, when Lala spun her own body enough to use her free left hand, and grabbed the incoming leg. Surprise overtook Naruto, as Lala gripped his leg and threw him upwards, much higher than he had thought she could, before she leapt after him, a pair of black, devil-like wings appearing from the back of her shirt, compliments of peak. She's really getting into this, Naruto thought, as he continued his ascent, which had decreased in velocity slightly. Flaring his aura again, Naruto stopped himself in mid-air, and turned his body back to Lala, who was aiming her own kick at Naruto. If she's really going to give this her all. At this point, Naruto had grabbed Lala's leg, stopping her kick and this time surprising her. Then so will I. As this thought passed his mind, Naruto increased the intensity of his aura, and quickly spun Lala, launching her toward the ground. At the last moment, she managed to right herself, and gently sat down on the ground, while Naruto lowered himself to the ground as well. Even before his feet touched solid earth, Lala rushed toward him again, aiming this punch toward his head. Ducking under the fist, Naruto pivoted his body to swing his leg out to try and take out Lala's legs from under her, only for her to leap over the attack. Shifting her own weight, Lala threw another kick at Naruto's head while sailing over him, only for Naruto to seemingly blur out of her sight. Her reactions kicked in suddenly, allowing her nimble body to twist in midair, dodging the powerful punch that had been aimed for her. Landing back to her feet, Lala turned her gaze back to Naruto, the same red aura still blazing around his body. You're really good at this, Lala-chan. Naruto complimented, while keeping his gaze on Lala for any possible attack she might attempt. Thank you, she chirped happily, a large smile adorning her face. And you seem to really be getting the hang of your powers. Maybe, but I'm still a long way from mastering them. Naruto replied, but anything else he might have said was stopped by another new arrival, or namely, their weapon trying to cleave Naruto in half. Leaping backwards, Naruto landed on his hands, before pushing off of them and landing on his feet again, facing the new arrival. It was a man garbed with metallic silver armor, a large purple flowing cape, and silvery gray hair. In his hands was a large broad sword, but the strange thing about it was that the blade itself seemed to be made of a strange green energy. Assassin, how dare you attempt to harm Princess Lala-sama? The figure said, while pointing his sword at Naruto. Zaston, Lala cried out, her tone belaying her complete surprise. Huh, Zaston? Naruto asked, confusion written all over his face, but it vanished, as did Naruto from that spot altogether, when Zaston once again attacked, this time the blade smashing into the ground and leaving a larger gouge in the earth. Damn, talk about a heavy hitter. Naruto commented, seeing the damage done. Hey, you might want to take this fight seriously. Zaston said, as he held the blade aloft and pointed it toward Naruto once again. As captain of the Deviluk Royal Bodyguards, I will not allow you to lay a hand on Lala-sama. Ah, Zaston, wait. Lala called out, trying to explain what had been happening, but the words fell on deaf ears as Zaston once again charged Naruto. Naruto managed to lean back, dodging first one strike, then another and another. Each time, Naruto continued to back away from Zaston's attacks, while the silver-haired swordsman continued his assault. After a short time of this, Zaston began to realize that Naruto was only dodging his attacks, and decided to up the battle a bit. Leaping high into the air, Zaston drew back his sword, ready for his next attack, which he thought would end the fight. As he dropped to the ground, Naruto finally decided that that would be enough of the dodging game, and it was time to take the offensive. As Zaston's attack fell toward Naruto, time seemed to slow down, as the silver-haired swordsman neared the crimson-haired fighter. "Naruto-kun!" Lala cried out as Zaston's attack connected, kicking up a huge blast of dust, obscuring her sight for a brief time. When she did manage to see what had happened finally, her terrified expression turned into one of relief. The ground beneath where Naruto had been standing had been cratered in, the large hole easily being around 12 feet across in a perfect circle, while being about 1.5 feet deep. Zaston's expression was one of pure shock when he saw that Naruto was completely unharmed, since the young man was holding Zaston's sword between his two hands, the red aura now blazing to life around him. Pushing outward, Naruto launched Zaston into the air, while said person flipped through the air and landed back on his feet, while Naruto himself leapt out of the crater that had been made. As Naruto made contact with solid earth again, he stared Zaston down, while Zaston did the same to Naruto. "Hey, well, I must admit, you surprise me with your skill, human," Zaston said, while a small smile adorned his face. "But know that I will finish you off with," his words were suddenly cut off, thanks to Lala appearing behind him and punching him squarely in the back of the head. "Zaston, just what are you thinking?" Lala shouted out, while putting her hands on her hips and glaring at Zaston's downed form. "Lala-sama, I was only trying to keep you safe from this assassin." Zaston tried to reason, while pointing at Naruto, hoping that she would understand his logic. "He's not an assassin, he's my fiancé," Lala responded, as she crossed her arms angrily. Why your fiancé?" Zaston said, while voicing his obvious disbelief. But I was told your fiancé was a blonde-haired boy." Zaston tried to reason. Letting loose a breath, Naruto let his transformation drop, changing his hair back to blonde, and his eyes back to blue. The look of surprise seemed to increase on Zaston's face, while he glanced back nervously at Lala, who was still glaring down at him. "Lala-chan, it's okay," Naruto said, drawing Lala's gaze from Zaston to Naruto. "You don't need to get upset with Zaston. It did look like I was attacking you, to the uninformed person, so I don't hold him responsible for that." "But, Naruto-kun," Lala said, while Naruto shook his head. "Really, it's okay. I'm not hurt and Zaston knows the truth now, so it's okay," Naruto said, to which Lala smiled in understanding and immediately glomped him once again. "So, Zaston, I guess we should fill you in on the details of what's been happening since Lala got here." 1 hour later. "So, you were trying to get re-acclimated to an older power of yours, which was why you and Lala-sama were sparring with each other?" Zaston asked, after the lengthy explanation from Naruto, with Lala adding her own insight every now and then. "Right, the same one that was sealed not long after Lala-chan and her father left the village 8 years ago," Naruto finished. "Luckily, the suppressors on my power were removed, so now I have full access to my old abilities again." "True, but with only 1 month to train, I'm not too sure how you intend to gain full mastery of your abilities again," Zaston commented, getting a sheepish smile from Naruto as the blonde scratched the back of his head. "Well, I think I might have a suggestion for you." "Huh, what's that?" Lala asked, as she had taken a seat next to Naruto, happily squashing his arm into her chest for what seemed like the umpteenth time. "Lala-sama, what I'm suggesting is that we take Naruto Dono onto the ship with us," Zaston said, while Lala's expression turned to one of understanding, while Naruto's continued to show confusion. "Oh, that would be a great idea," Lala said happily, while Naruto was still lost. "Wait, by ship, you mean?" Naruto began, only to point toward the sky. "Yes, exactly. You see, Lala-sama created a device a while ago, which can actually distort the flow of time," Zaston said, before he stopped and turned to Lala. "Lala-sama, since you created it, perhaps you should explain it." "Hi," Lala happily chirped. "You see, Naruto-kun, this device, Click-Click-Time-kun, actually causes a dilation in the time stream, allowing a targeted area to experience anywhere from 2 to 20 times the time spent outside the area." "So, you're saying this device allows for more time to be spent on whatever you need it for?" Naruto asked, trying to clarify the whole thing. Right, that's exactly it. Zaston said. At Lala-sama's suggestion, we have applied this technology to several rooms in the ship, most of which are training areas. With this method in place, our soldiers are able to get in much more training in a shorter amount of time. So, we could do the same for me? Naruto asked. Yes, this way, you could have much more time to spend on remastering new powers, and this will ensure that there are no interruptions from any person here. Zaston reaffirmed. Well, I like the sound of that. Naruto said, as he stood up, Lala still practically glued to his arm, with Zaston following his lead. But just to make sure nothing can be said by the councils, I'd better let Oji-san know about this before we head out. Alright, settle down. Iruka called out, trying to calm the constant chatter of the room's occupants, but he soon found his words falling on deaf ears. I said settle down. Using his patented demonic head jutsu, Iruka finally managed to make the class settle down, and as such, told them to take their seats. As the former students of his did this, he couldn't help but glance around the room, wondering which of these future ninja he would see again someday, possibly as the same rank as or higher than him. Glancing over the room's occupants, he instantly noticed the strange absence of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy that he knew very well. About 2 days after the whole Forbidden Scroll incident, and Iruka's decision to promote Naruto to Genin, with the blessing of the Hokage, Iruka had gone to try and visit the young blonde Genin, but he had strangely found his apartment empty. Going to the Hokage, Iruka learned that Naruto had been left an inheritance, which had included a new apartment, but the Sandame had also told Iruka that Naruto had just left earlier that morning on a training trip with an old acquaintance of his. I hope Naruto gets here soon, Iruka thought, before clearing his throat and once again drawing the group of young hopeful ninjas' attention. Alright, now before we begin the announcements of the new teams, I wanted to take the chance to say I'm proud of you students. I've been with you for several years, and I've seen your steady progress into some fine new ninja. But once you leave this room with your sensei, I hope you understand that you represent the entire village of Konohagakure no Sato. At this point, Iruka pulled back to take a deep breath. So don't screw anything up. Still as good at yelling at people as ever, eh, Iruka? A new voice commented from the doorway, and as the whole room turned to see who it was that spoke, they were instantly shocked by what they saw, which even caused some to fall out of their chairs. It was Naruto Uzumaki, but the main problem that caused most to do a double take was the clothes he was wearing, namely because there was no orange at all. Instead, he now wore a pair of black cargo shorts with multiple pockets along the sides and back, with a fishnet t-shirt. Over this was a sleeveless black shirt, and a black short staff tied to his back by a strap going over one shoulder, across his torso, and around his gut. Also, on both his arms were a pair of wrist bracers, both red in color, but with a strange white spiral on them, which matched the red one on Naruto's shirt. 1. Naruto? Iruka asked, since he was having trouble believing the person before him was the same young blonde he had considered something like a younger brother to him. The one and only. Naruto responded, while smiling at Iruka's shocked face. Naruto Baka, only people who passed the test should be here, so get lost. A new voice called out, this one belonging to a pink-haired, green-eyed girl, who was wearing red dress, dark green shorts, and had her forehead protector on top of her head. So, Iruka, you managed to heal up completely? Naruto asked, ignoring the question from the pinkhead in the room, and instead deciding to speak to his old teacher. Yes, say what you will about a medic nin, but I've learned to never disrespect their skills. Iruka responded, while noticing out of the corner of his eye the same pink-haired girl started turning red in anger. I thought I told you to get lost, Naruto Baka. The pink-haired girl screamed out, this time rising from her chair and shaking her fist at Naruto, her anger clearly showing on her cherry-red face. Oh, I'm sorry, Sakura, but I don't speak howler monkey. Naruto responded, while regarding the pink-haired girl with a bored look, further shocking the classroom's occupants, since everyone had known that Naruto had always had a crush on Sakura. What did you just call me? Sakura questioned, still not sure if she, along with the rest of the class, had heard Naruto's words right. What did I say? Naruto responded, idly wondering why the whole class was shell-shocked by his words. Alright, who are you? 'Cause you sure as hell aren't Naruto? One of the students, a rather feral boy in the back of the class yelled, while standing to his feet, pointing one of his clawed fingers at Naruto. "And what makes you say that, Kiba?" Naruto replied, while leveling his gaze at the shaggy-haired boy, who flinched back slightly from the hardened gaze, only to respond to Naruto's comment. "Because there's no way in hell that the Naruto we know would call Sakura anything besides Sakura-chan." Kiba yelled out, while Naruto sighed out loud. "Did it ever occur to you that the Naruto you know wasn't the real Naruto?" Naruto replied, while Kiba scoffed out loud. However, any comment that the feral-looking boy could make was stopped by Iruka telling Kiba to sit down and for Naruto to take a seat. "But Iruka-sensei, Naruto failed, and shouldn't be here." Another student, this one female with long pale blonde hair, light blue eyes, a purple skirt and shirt, with bandages wrapping around her legs and stomach, and purple and white elbow warmers, while a Konoha Hite 8 acted as a belt. "That's where you are wrong, Ino. Naruto actually passed the exam with the highest rating out of the entire class, but he was failed as an elaborate trap set up by Hokage-sama and myself to flush out a suspected traitor of Konoha. As such, he has every right to be here right now." Iruka responded, surprising everyone in the class, since they had honestly believed Naruto had failed the exam for the third time. Iruka, in his mind, couldn't help but smirk at the reactions of the class to his statement, which in truth was real, since using a Junin-level Kenjutsu, and with such a high effect had technically given Naruto extra credit to pass the exam. "Now, if you would all please take your seats, we can begin the team announcements." For Team 1, at this, Naruto tuned out the announcement, instead opting to readjust one of his bracers, while idly reminding himself to thank the workers on Lala's ship for making this outfit at such a rapid pace. For Team 7, this team will consist of Naruto Uzumaki. At this, Naruto's gaze turned back to Iruka, wanting to know who his teammates were, and who their sensei was. Sakura Haruno. Naruto let out a loud groan at this. And Sasuke Uchiha. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me. First I get stuck with the pink howler monkey, and then the Prince of Broodiness himself?" Naruto said out loud, while Iruka gave Naruto a glance to show he had the scarred teacher's condolences. The instructor of this team will be Kakashi Hitaki. Iruka finished the team announcement, while noticing that Naruto's expression had turned even more annoyed at that piece of information. For Team 8, this team will consist of Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Inuzuka Kiba, and your instructor will be Kurenai Uehi. "Woohoo, I get Hinata on my team." Kiba yelled happily, while Hinata herself was giving short glances at Naruto, idly wondering what had changed him in the short month, while Shino merely nodded his head in acknowledgement of hearing the announcement. Team 9 is still in circulation, so Team 10 will consist of Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. Your Junin instructor will be Asuma Sarutobi, Iruka said, before rolling up the scroll with the information on it. You have an hour break to have lunch, but be back here to meet you new teachers. Also, like I said, you now represent the village of Konoha, so be sure to train hard and do your best with your careers. Naruto-kun, I found you. Another new voice called out, this one from the window. As the students turned to see who had said that, they only found a strangely pink blur dash from the window and into Naruto, causing the blonde to fall from his chair, the person following as well. They were all shocked to see a lovely young woman, appearing to be around the same age as all of them, with long and vivid pink hair, even more than Sakura's, as she hugged Naruto tightly to her, not even caring that her impressive bust was smooshin' into his chest. Naruto-kun, I thought you were gonna wait for me at Shuko-saru's office? She said, while pulling herself away slightly to give him a cute pout that many of the students thought was very cute, while Naruto could only chuckle softly at her antics. I did wait for you, but when you weren't there, I had to leave or else I would have missed the team announcements. Naruto replied, while her pout stayed firmly in place. Alright, I'm sorry I didn't wait for you. How about I make it up to you by taking you to get some Ichirakus for lunch? Lala's happy squeal of delight greeted his ears as she happily hugged him, but instead of causing him to cover his ears in pain like Sakura's would have done, he couldn't help but mentally comment on how much cuter she seemed thanks to it. However, their moment together was interrupted by a voice in the classroom, namely Sakura deciding to open her mouth. Hey, who the hell are you and why are you hugging Naruto Baka? Sakura yelled loudly, her high-pitched voice causing some of the classroom's occupants to cover their ears from the sound. I'm Lala, Lala commented, causing Sakura to become even more infuriated by this. Before Lala and Naruto separated from their hug and stood up, though Lala still kept Naruto's arm buried in her chest. "Why are you still hugging that baka?" Sakura screamed even louder, once again forcing most of the people in the area to grimace in pain while holding their ears again, though Naruto and Lala strangely enough weren't affected by it. If anyone in the class had known, they would have been surprised to know that special noise filtering devices were in place in Naruto's clothes thanks to Lala, while Pete could work in the same way for Lala. Essentially, this meant that any noise that could be dangerous would instantly be sensed and stopped, while anything else would be able to pass through unobstructed. "Sakura, do you think you could stop screaming for 5 minutes?" Naruto asked her, though he was asking more for his friend's sake than himself, since some of the closer classroom occupants looked to be in severe pain from her screams. "Naruto baka, you keep your mouth shut. And you, tell us how you know this baka," Sakura shouted, while getting first in Naruto's face, then in Lala's, but by now, the much bustier pinkhead was sporting an angry look which was being directed at Sakura. "You're being rather rude," Lala commented, which finally sent Sakura over the deep end, causing her to ball up her hand into a fist and throw it at Lala, intent on trying to smash the much curvier pinkhead's face in. However, to Sakura's shock, her fist was stopped by Naruto himself, who managed to stop the punch with only his index finger. "Listen, I get that you have severe anger issues, but keep them to yourself from now on," Naruto said, his voice, while calm, held an almost undetectable level of anger in it. His tone, along with the fact that he had not only stopped a punch from Sakura, but had also only done it with one finger, had surprised several of the students, since Naruto had always let her hit him in the past. "Naruto-kun, I appreciate you watching out for me, but I can handle this one," Lala said, an almost angel-like smile on her face, which was scaring some of the males by it. Nodding his head, Naruto pushed lightly to back up Sakura's fist, while Sakura herself slowly felt her mind rebooting from the shock of Naruto of all people stopping her punch. As this happened, her mind registered the words from the bustier pinkhead, and Sakura felt her anger grow once again, causing her to wind up and throw another punch, this one which Naruto wasn't going to stop. Sakura's eyes widened, as did the eyes of several others in the room, when Lala not only caught Sakura's fist, but twisted the arm into a painful hold. As Sakura tried to unsuccessfully free her hand from Lala's grip, she was unprepared for the strong slap that Lala had sent her way. The open palm connected with Sakura's face, but instead of only causing her head to reel back, Sakura's entire body was launched by the force of the slap, sending her over the desks and straight into the wall behind Iruka's desk. It was also at this point that another resident of the classroom, one that had very messy black hair and dark black eyes, while a permanent scowl was plastered on his face, moved. His gaze went from where Sakura had crashed into the wall and was slowly regaining her feet, to where Lala was standing, where the more developed pinkhead was still standing with her arm raised. Now, by some people's opinions, this boy, Sasuke Uchiha, was actually a bright person, probably the brightest since any of the Hokages, in the minds of his delusional fangirls, the civilian council, and his own warped fantasy, and so his mind slowly managed to piece together a thought about Lala. This pink-haired woman is strong, if she can send someone flying that distance with only a slap. Sasuke thought, while eyeing Lala up and down, as if sizing her up, before his eyes hardened in determination and he licked his lips at his next thought. If she is as strong as that slap indicates, she'll be perfect to help me repopulate the Uchiha clan with my offspring. And so with that thought in mind, Sasuke rose from his seat, and stalked back to where Lala was standing, now with her hand down, while Naruto nodded his head in appreciation of her work. "You, who are you?" Sasuke all but demanded as he stood before Lala, staring at her face and idly noticing she was a beauty, before his eyes starting dropping lower toward her chest level. But he soon found his view obstructed by another person stepping between him and Lala, which turned out to be none other than Naruto, whose expression was rather annoyed. "I would appreciate it if you would stop ogling her, Uchiha," Naruto said coldly, while Sasuke scoffed at him. "Get lost, loser, I have business with this woman, not you," Sasuke said, while he lifted his hand to push Naruto away, only for his hand to be blocked by Naruto's. If you have something to say about her, you can say it to me. Naruto responded, while his own glare easily outmatched the Uchiha's. And what is your connection to her? Sasuke decided to ask, not really because he actually cared, but because he was hoping to use the loser's lack of a reason, as he thought it would be, to get him to back down. I'm his fiancé. Lala chirped happily, while once again latching onto Naruto's arm, and burying it in her generous chest. Her words instantly caused a single reaction, shock, to spread through the classroom, causing some to glare at the blonde for taking this young beauty away from them, while a single female in the class was glaring at the back of Lala's head. Fiancé? How in the hell did you get a fiancé when you're just some no-named, clan-less loser? Sasuke pressed for information. Now with this new development, he thought to go to the councils and have this either removed, or better yet, traded to himself. It was something happened over 8 years ago, and it can't be undone by anyone, except the Hokage or Lala's father. Naruto responded, while he saw the gears were very slowly turning in Sasuke's head. Perfect, I'll have the councils bully the Hokage into giving up this agreement, or if that doesn't work, I'm sure they can get her father to back off. Sasuke thought, while a dark smirk began forming in his face. Well, loser, I don't think that will be the case for long. Sasuke said darkly, while he restarted eyeing Lala, only for his gaze to once again be blocked by Naruto, who at this point had been fed up with Sasuke's attitude. Sasuke, I'm only gonna say this once, and I suggest you listen. Drop it, Naruto said, his tone momentarily chilling Sasuke, and the rest of the students, but it seemed that Sasuke didn't know when to quit. What if I don't? What if I decide to have the councils engage this woman to me? Sasuke said, while smirking victoriously at Naruto, expecting the blonde's expression to change from anger to panic at the mention of the council. However, he was in for a shock when Naruto grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and hoisted him into the air, surprising everyone at his show of strength. When I said drop it, Sasuke, I meant it, and if you think for even a second that the councils will matter in this, you're in for a very rude awakening. Naruto said, his voice eerily calm, while ignoring Sasuke's attempt to pry the blonde's hand off of his shirt. Unhand me, you peasant. Sasuke demanded, only to be unceremoniously dropped on his ass by Naruto, who turned his back to Sasuke and began to walk off, his arm around Lala's shoulders, before the two of them left the room. I swear, he'll pay for embarrassing me. Sasuke thought, as he stood up, and left as well, intent on heading to the council chambers and telling his own version of the events to the councilors. Ichiraku's ramen stand. Itadakimasu. Lala cried happily, chopsticks in her hand, and several bowls of ramen before her, while one was already in her other hand. Almost instantly, she began digging into her ramen at a pace that would be described by some as ravenous, while Naruto beside her did the same thing. After plowing through several bowls of ramen, Naruto set his chopsticks down for a moment, before he glanced over at Lala. The young pinkette had a happy expression on her face, since the two of them had gone to Ichiraku's after their shopping excursion a month ago, and Lala had instantly fell in love with the food there. Tucci and Ayame, the resident cooks, who were also father and daughter respectively, were not only happy that Naruto and Lala had been reunited, but also that they had another customer to enjoy their ramen. Enjoying the food, Lala-chan? Naruto asked, as Lala picked up another bowl. Yes, she happily replied, before slurping down the contents of this bowl, and then drinking the broth. I just can't get enough of this great ramen. She finished, as she made a grab for another bowl, while several people passing by were divided between glaring at Naruto, and staring in shock at Lala plowing through so much food. Glad you approve, young lady. Tucci commented while smiling down at Lala, partly because she was a good customer, but mostly because of the way Naruto was smiling at her, and how she seemed to bring out some kind of happiness from inside the blonde. Well, I guess this is one place we can count on for a good meal on a routine basis. Naruto commented, while Ayame came out from the back with a half a dozen bowls of ramen for Naruto and Lala apiece, which both happily dug into. And the two of us are glad to have some continuing customers. Ayame said cheerfully, since she was happy to see Naruto as relaxed as he was, which seemed to be because of the lovely young pink-haired girl beside him. It was also at that particular moment that an Anbu wearing a falcon mask appeared beside Naruto, whispered something in his ear, and after handing the blonde a scroll, disappeared. Naruto placed down his chopsticks and ramen bowl, and then picked up the scroll before unrolling it and reading its contents. Well, it seems the civilian council has something to say to me. They're demanding my presence at a meeting to be held at 8 o'clock tonight. Naruto said idly, while he wrapped the scroll and channeled some energy into his hand, effectively vaporizing the scroll. Oh, can I come too? Lala asked, since she had finished her bowl of ramen and was staring curiously at Naruto, an expression that the two resident ramen chefs found very cute on her. I'm guessing they want to try and bully me to drop my relationship with you again. Naruto commented to her, while Lala's face took on a scowl, which Naruto thought made her look kind of cute as well. So, I guess if you want to, you can come with me. But please don't let their words get to you too much, okay Lala-chan? Naruto finished, while giving Lala a pleading look. But Lala began, only to see Naruto's expression to her. Alright, I'll be good, Lala said, while smiling at Naruto, which the blonde returned. Okay, well, I guess I better be heading back to the academy, the 2 hours is almost up. Naruto commented, while rising from his seat and dropping some money onto the counter. Keep the change, Tuchi Oji-san, Naruto said, as he turned to leave, only to feel Lala practically attach herself to Naruto's arm again, while smiling at his confused expression. I'll go with you, Naruto-kun, Lala announced while giving Naruto her best puppy expression. Please? Any thought of denying her that Naruto might have had would have vanished instantly, while the blonde nodded his head at her request. Squealing happily, Naruto and Lala left the ramen stand and began their return to the academy to await Naruto's new teacher. Later, Konoha Academy. For 3 hours, Naruto, Lala, Sasuke and Sakura had sat in the classroom, while all the other teams had been picked up by their senseis. So, after a while, Naruto had decided to do a little meditating, while Lala had happily chirped that she would too. Naruto couldn't help but mentally smirk at Lala's expression, which had a serene feel it. I'm still amazed that she picked up meditating as fast as she did. Naruto thought, while remembering back to when they had started training on her ship, she had had a very difficult time sitting still and concentrating for too long. As a member of the Deviluk race, she always seemed to be abound with an endless supply of energy, so sitting in one place for any amount of time longer than a few minutes was a trial for her. Snapping his eyes open at a new energy signature he felt coming toward the classroom, Naruto stood from his spot, before placing a hand on Lala's shoulder, regaining her attention. Seeing Naruto standing up, Lala stood up as well, while dusting off her skirt from any of the dust it might have had. It was also at this point, the door slid open, showing the person behind it to have almost gravity-defying silver hair, while a Konoha Hite on his head was slanted down to cover his left eye and a blue face mask covered from his neck up to his nose. Garbing his body was the standard attire for a Junin, blue pants, a long-sleeve blue jacket, and the Junin vest over top, with shinobi sandals on his feet. So you three are my students? The new arrival casually said, before his gaze landed on the fourth occupant of the room. Who's the added person? He asked, while quickly identifying his 3 students, but wasn't able to identify the fourth person. She's not a student, she's a guest of mine. Naruto quickly answered. Oh, Kakashi said, seemingly taking the answer at face value. Well, as for you 3, my first impression is, you're boring. 2 sets of tick marks suddenly materialized at this point, while the third person was eyeing the silver-haired man with an annoyed gaze. So, meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. With that, Kakashi vanished in a poof of smoke, while the room's 4 occupants followed his instructions. Rooftop. Alright, so to begin this little team meeting, I want each of you to give a small introduction. Kakashi said, as he stood before the group that was sitting on the steps, Sakura and Sasuke in the front, while Naruto and Lala sat in the back, as Lala, for once, didn't have Naruto's arm buried in her chest. Names, likes, dislikes, hobbies, and dreams for the future. Sensei, do you think you could show us how to do it? Sakura asked, while raising her hand. Alright, my name is Kakashi Hitaki. My likes and dislikes, well, I don't feel like saying. Hobbies are unimportant, and I don't have dreams for the future. Kakashi replied, his voice never once shifting from his bored tone. Either this guy is a master of mystery, or just a lazy ass. Naruto thought, while Kakashi turned his gaze to Sakura. Since you seem to have a very inquisitive mind, you can go next bubblegum. Kakashi said while looking at Sakura, who bristled at the nickname, while Naruto half glared at Kakashi for his slight insult to Lala. Alright, my name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are. Sakura glanced at the Uchiha and gave a slight giggle. My dislikes are Naruto Baka, his Baka fiancé, and Ino Pig. Sakura said, while glaring at two of the people in question. My hobbies are. Again, she glanced at Sasuke and giggled. And my dreams for the future. Once again, she glanced and giggled at Sasuke. Alright, dark and dreary, your turn. Kakashi said, while gesturing to Sasuke, who glared angrily at Kakashi's nickname for him. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have few likes and many dislikes. I don't have any hobbies outside of getting stronger, and my dreams for the future, to resurrect my clan and to kill a certain person. Sasuke said, though when he mentioned resurrecting his clan, he glanced smugly at Lala, who stuck her tongue out at him. And last we have you, Blondie, so go ahead. Kakashi said as he gestured to Naruto. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are ramen, training to get more powerful, and spending time with my fiancé, Lala-chan. Naruto said this, while wrapping an arm around Lala's shoulder, while the pinkette in question practically melted into the embrace, causing Sasuke and Sakura to glare for different reasons. My dislikes are arrogant and bigoted people. My hobbies are training and helping Lala-chan test her inventions. As for dreams for the future, outside of living happily with Lala-chan, I'm still not sure. Ha, that blonde loser won't be so happy when the councils take that woman and make her marry me. Sasuke thought smugly, while smirking at the plan the councils had agreed to. That pink-haired slut, she's trying to woo Sasuke-kun by using Naruto Baka. Sakura thought angrily, not even realizing the mental comment she had made. Alright, now that that's out of the way, Kakashi began, only to be interrupted by Sakura. Hey, what about her? Sakura screeched, while pointing at Lala. She's here as well, so she should say something. Sakura continued, while mentally planning to use anything she could to have her mother, a council member, order the much curvier pinkhead removed from the village. Lala-chan is not a member of this team or even a ninja of Konoha, so as such, she doesn't need to give an introduction. Naruto quickly interjected, causing Sakura to bristle once again as she stood to her feet. Naruto Baka, I wasn't talking to you, so butt out. Sakura screamed, while throwing a punch at Naruto's head, only for Lala to catch the punch like earlier, and shoved Sakura away, effectively launching her across the roof. And why did you attack one of my students? Kakashi asked, his bored gaze drilling into Lala, who turned her attention to Kakashi and smiled at him. Her serene expression confusing the silver-haired Junin for some reason. I didn't actually attack her, I just gave her a little push in the right direction to go home in. Lala responded, causing Naruto to put a hand to his mouth to hide his chuckles, while Kakashi's sweat dropped at her. Be that as it may, I can't simply let you walk away from hurting one of my students. Kakashi said, while reaching out to grab Lala and take her before the councils. Kakashi, despite what many may think, actually believed in the councils more than the Hokage, and as such, was more inclined to follow their orders. And as it stood, one of them was a subtle order to him to try and bring this girl before them to have her questioned, and if need be, re-educated to follow their orders. However, Kakashi's hand was stopped before reaching Lala by Naruto, who had grabbed the silver-haired Junin's hand and held it in a powerful grip. I suggest you let go of my hand, Genin. Kakashi said, his one visible eye narrowed, while his voice had shifted to a commanding tone. And I suggest you think before you act, sensei. Naruto said, the last word being said with so much sarcasm, a deaf man could have picked it up. Sakura attacked Lala-chan first, so by technicality, it's called self-defense, and since Lala-chan isn't a shinobi, Sakura would actually be the one in the wrong for attacking a civilian. Several moments of silence went by, while Kakashi took into account the situation, and was thinking of ways to switch it to his benefit. But Kakashi knew the young blonde currently gripping his arm was in the favor of the Hokage, and Naruto was also right about the situation between Sakura and Lala. As it stood, if Kakashi tried to take Lala in, there was a very good chance that Sakura would be the one to be punished, while Lala would walk away from it. Fine, but don't let it happen again. Kakashi conceded, at which Naruto let go of his wrist, while Sakura had managed to pull herself out of the newly made imprint in the wall and retake her seat. glaring at Lala the whole time. Now, since we've had the introductions, we need to discuss your genin test. But Kakashi-sensei, we already took our test in the academy. Sakura whined, getting a scoff from Naruto. Sakura, that little quiz they gave us was only to see if we had the qualities to even be genin. Naruto said, while glancing at her with an annoyed expression on his face. Correct, Kakashi said, cutting off any comment Sakura may have had. After the teams are assigned, each Junin sensei gives the real genin test. And this one has a 66% failure rate. At these words, Sakura and Sasuke's eyes widened in shock, while Naruto's narrowed in suspicion. So, now that you know this, I want you to meet me at Training Ground 7 at 6 AM tomorrow. Oh, and don't eat anything, unless you want to puke it back up. And with that, Kakashi vanished in another poof of smoke, leaving behind his genin team. Shrugging, Naruto stood to leave, while Lala re-glued herself to his arm, before the two of them left the roof, knowing there was still a council meeting to deal with. Council chambers, 8 PM. You are late, a loud voice shouted, the source of being an elderly man with a pair of glasses, with a graying beard and hair being a more distinguishing feature, while he wore regal white robes. No, I'm on time. The message said at 8 PM. Naruto responded, while Lala stayed by his side, causing some of the council members to stare at her with curious expressions. We rescheduled the meeting to 7 PM and a messenger was sent to your apartment. The same old man replied. Then that explains it, I vacated that place and moved to somewhere else. Not that it matters, since I was out training for the past few hours. Naruto responded, while the old man bristled in anger. Well, now that you are here, we can't get this meeting underway. An old woman, whose gray hair was done into two tight buns, while her robes were just as pristine as the equally old man's, said out loud. No, we can't, Naruto interrupted. Since I'm classified as a ninja of Konoha, the Hokage must be present to any meeting involving one of his shinobi. Also, since I've been the ward of the Hokage since my infancy, the Sandaime is technically my guardian. That doesn't matter, since this meeting is partially about stripping you of your ninja title. Another counselor, this one a rotund man who was in charge of part of the market district, called out. Any comment from either Naruto or another counselor was stopped when the doors opened and in walked the Sandaime Hokage. Does anyone mind explaining why one of my shinobi is here for a meeting, but I was not informed? Sarutobi questioned, while glaring at the three older members of the council. Ah, Sarutobi, we've been expecting you. Another elderly man, this one with bandages wrapping the right side of his face, and a large X-shaped scar on his chin, said, while a slight accumulation of sweat began forming on his forehead. I'm sure you were, Sarutobi replied, his tone laced heavily with sarcasm. But, it's also my understanding, from the bit I heard before walking through the door, that you are trying to remove Naruto from the ninja program. Sarutobi, you must understand. That thing could very well be dangerous to our shinobi, what with his affliction. As such, it's only right that he not be permitted to join the shinobi program. Another counselor said, this one a rather unattractive pink-haired woman, though with her flat chest, she could just as easily pass for a man. But, since the shinobi of this village fall under my jurisdiction, you have no say in trying to expel someone from it. Also, Naruto more than earned his position by not only learning a Junin-level technique, but also by soundly defeating Mizuki, a Chunin-level traitor. Sarutobi responded. Even still, this matter is still up for debate, and as such, we must vote for the outcome. The first elderly man from before said, while mentally smirking since a little less than half the Shinobi Council and the entire Civilian Council would back up his vote. True Homura, but as it stands, only the Shinobi Council and clan heads can vote on this matter, since it is a ninja-related situation. Sarutobi shot back, while feeling a sense of pride rise up at the angered expressions on the faces of the civilian counselors and the advisors. So, if you feel that Naruto should be removed from the shinobi program, raise your hands. At this, 5 of the 11 members of the shinobi council raised their hands, while only one clan head, the head of the Inuzuka clan, joined it, totaling the number to 6. And all those for allowing Naruto to stay in the shinobi program? At this, the remaining 6 members of the Shinobi Council, as well as the remaining clan heads, the Akamichi, Nara, Yamanaka, Aburame, and Hyuga heads, which totaled to 11. Well, I think we have our decision. I'm against this completely. That brat shouldn't even be breathing right now. Yet another person, this one being a woman with shaggy black hair, slit eyes, tattoos on her cheeks and claws on her hands, cried out while slamming her fist into the table. In your own opinion, Sume-san, but the vote has already spoken, and you should just leave it be. The head of Hyuga clan, Hiyashi said, while standing up and facing Sume, his expression showing hardened concentration, which was only amplified by his pure white eyes. Now, since we have reached a settlement on this, I think that will conclude this meeting. Sarutobi said, only to be stopped again. Not quite, Sarutobi. The same scarred man from before said, while standing up and directing his gaze to Lala. We still have to discuss this girl here, and what will be done with her. Watch your words, Danzo Shimura, or you may not live to regret them. Naruto said harshly, while putting himself between Danzo and Lala. Know your place, you brat. This girl is not a citizen of Konoha, and as such, the civilian council has every right to decide on what will happen with her. Danzo responded, while knowing his agenda would be enforced by the mindless masses on the civilian council. She should be removed from the demon brat's marriage agreement and married to Sasuke-sama. The same pink-haired, man-looking woman, from before shouted out, instantly gaining a wave of agreement from many of the councilors, though almost all of them were civilian, while the Inuzuka head, as well as the advisors were agreeing too. Not possible. Sarutobi interrupted, his ki instantly stopping the chattering of the room's occupants, while simultaneously drawing their attention to him. Naruto and Lala are betrothed to each other, thanks to an ancient ritual of Lala's people, since they were 8 years old. To even think of trying to remove the marriage agreement would have serious repercussions, and I'm not about to let you fools in your arrogance do something as stupid as what you are planning. And what possibly could these serious repercussions be? Homura commented smugly. That would be my papa. Lala said, speaking for the first time since arriving at the chamber. Oh, your papa, we're so scared. The elderly lady commented, getting a chorus of laughs from many of councilors. You should be, Kaharu. Sarutobi said grimly, causing many of the occupants to look at him in surprise. I met Lala Dono's father 8 years ago when she and Naruto became engaged, and I'll be the first to say, he could very well wipe out this entire village, and all its people, by himself. And that's not even mentioning out Empire's army. Lala decided to add, further increasing the fearful expression on the councilors' faces. The advance army of the Deviluk Empire easily outnumbers the entire population of this whole continent by itself, not to mention the 4 other military branches. You actually are expecting us to believe your father has an army outclassing our villages? Danzo questioned, though his voice relayed what a hard time he was having believing her. Believe what you want, Naruto said harshly, instantly drawing the attention of all the room's occupants to himself, as he took several steps forward, placing himself in the center of the room. But just know that if any of you try the same stunt you pulled 8 years ago after Lala-chan left here, I'll finish what I started, and destroy you all. How dare you, you filthy little brat. We could have you arrested for trying to interfere with council business. Kaharu said harshly, which caused Naruto to smirk at her. Again, you are wrong at that point, Kaharu. Once again, Sarutobi said, drawing the old woman's attention to him. And what does that mean? Homura asked, though his face began to pale at the smirk on Sarutobi's face, as he pulled out a scroll from his robes. This is an official letter from the Fire Daimyo. Sarutobi began, while some were wondering what the daimyo could want, and what it had to do with this matter right now. You see, when the marriage agreement between Naruto and Lala Dono happened 8 years ago, I received an official notice from our daimyo, informing me of his awareness of this matter. Many shocked faces appeared on the councilors, but Sarutobi wasn't done yet. Also, he had just recently sent me another notice, this one pertaining to a new connection Lala Dono has with him, which was only recently finalized. And what is this connection? Danzo asked, though he felt his stomach sinking at this. An alliance was formed between the Fire Daimyo and the Deviluk Empire through a third party. As such, Lala Dono, and to an extent Naruto-kun, falls under the direct protection of the Fire Daimyo, and as such, any and all decisions and matters involving either of them must be submitted to the daimyo, no matter their significance. But that's ridiculous. Homura shouted, his anger clearly shown at being outdone and Lala now being effectively out of their reach. Well, if there is nothing else you ancient pencil pushers want from either of us. Naruto said, before turning back to the doorway, and leaving with Lala by his side. Alright, Team 7, reporting in on the completion of our D-rank mission. Kakashi announced, as he stood in the mission briefing hall, while handing the mission scroll back to the Chunin behind the desk. Okay, I've confirmed your return. Would you and your team like another mission? The Chunin asked, while glancing at the 3 genin, whom he noticed 2 were shooting dirty looks at the third member, while the third member was ignoring this. No, we've done the necessary mission for the day, and they have their own training to work on. Kakashi responded, ignoring the Chunin's surprised look. And it was well deserved, since most fresh genin teams usually perform somewhere around 4 or 5 missions a day, instead of only 1. Geez, ever since that test, Kakashi-san hasn't had us do hardly anything. Naruto thought, his mind drifting back to the day they had officially become a genin team, and his hopes for a good team had been pretty much obliterated. Flashback, 1.5 months ago. Yo, glad to see you 3 decided to show up. Kakashi commented casually, while ignoring the glares from the 3 genin. You're late, Sakura screeched out, while pointing an accusing finger at Kakashi, her expression showing much more anger than it should. Though the fact that without Naruto hanging around her usual form of anger management had been removed from her daily activities. Yeah, sorry, but a black cat crossed my path, and I had to take the long way here. Kakashi responded, while his tone gave off the impression that he didn't honestly care that he had made them wait. Liar! Sakura screamed, while her face looked close to exploding from how red it was getting. Ignoring Sakura's angered screams, Kakashi stepped away from the genin, toward the 3 training posts were standing out of the ground. Pulling out an alarm clock from his back pouch, Kakashi placed it onto one of the training posts, and then pulled out a pair of silver bells. This alarm clock is set up to go off at noon, meaning this test will be over in 3 hours. Kakashi began, before holding the bells up for the 3 genin to see. And these bells are the object of this test. You must take one of these bells to pass this test and become an official genin. But with only 2 bells, that means 1 person will be sent back to the academy regardless. Sakura said, while Naruto and Kakashi eyed her for stating the obvious. That's correct. So, one of you will fail this no matter what. Seeing these words had a desired effect, Kakashi placed the 2 bells back onto his belt, and returned his gaze to the 3 genin. Also, I offer one more piece of advice to you. Come with the intent to kill, or you won't stand a chance. But Kakashi-sensei, what if we hurt you? Sakura asked, her tone showing actual concern at the chance of hurting their teacher. Let me be the one to worry about that. Kakashi responded, while raising his hand up. And, begin. Almost as soon as those words left his mouth, all 3 of the genin vanished from in front of him. Stretching his senses, Kakashi searched out the nearby area, trying to find the general areas where the 3 were hiding, while leaning to a tree to his side. Sasuke has managed to hide himself rather well, considering his slightly higher chakra reserves. Sakura, on the other hand, has completely suppressed her chakra, but I'm guessing that's because of her smaller reserves. Kakashi thought, but he soon noticed a missing point. Wait, where's? Any other thoughts were stopped, as Kakashi's war-gained danger sense kicked in, telling him to duck quickly, which he did. And not a moment too soon, since a split second after he dropped down, a fist sailed through the area where his head had been occupying a second ago. Twisting his body around, and putting some distance between himself and his attacker, Kakashi was surprised to see it was none other than Naruto, whose face was a mask of concentration. I missed, Naruto commented, while looking at his hand as he clenched and unclenched it into a fist, while Kakashi noticed that the tree he had been standing beside until just a second ago had been reduced to splinters, courtesy of Naruto. That punch, if it had hit, it would have actually killed me. Kakashi thought, while his single visible eye was widened in shock. And that strength, it's almost like Tsunade-sama's super strength. Any other thoughts that might have come up were stopped, since he noticed Naruto was facing him while he took a fighting stance. Guess I'll have to try a little harder then. Letting out an audible grunt, Naruto's muscles clenched tightly, before a swirling blue aura appeared around him, encasing his body like a fire, while causing the wind to pick up noticeably. What is this? Kakashi asked, but he didn't get a verbal answer, just Naruto's foot buried into his stomach, causing Kakashi to launch backwards, smashing into yet another tree in the clearing. Kakashi's pain-filled cough filled the air, but he was forced to move again, this time avoiding yet another punch, which caused the same effect as the last one. But before Kakashi could react, whether to distance himself from Naruto or to attack the blonde, it was never known, since Naruto reacted before Kakashi did. Spinning his body around, another leg caught Kakashi in the chest, pushing him backwards again, before a fist caught the silver-haired Junin in the chin. Feeling his body lift off the ground, Kakashi found he had a momentary reprieve, if only for just a few seconds. This kid, he really is taking my advice seriously, Kakashi thought, as he twisted his body to land in a crouch, before quickly scanning the area, seeing that Naruto had not moved from his last spot. I might have to end up taking this seriously. I'm not impressed, Naruto said suddenly, while dropping his arms in stance, and standing in a relaxed pose. I get that being a Junin facing a Genin, you might be holding back, but this is ridiculous. At this, Kakashi's visible eye narrowed in anger. Funny talk, Genin, but you haven't seen what I'm capable of. Kakashi replied, as his left hand lifted to his headband, before pulling it upwards. I won't let some little wannabe ninja make a fool of me, especially not this one. Oh, so the infamous Sharingan no Kakashi graces me with his prized weapon. Naruto commented at seeing the blood-red eye with 3 black tomo in Kakashi's left eye socket. Glad to see you know of this unbeatable dujutsu. Kakashi replied, while taking an actual fighting stance, while Naruto shook his head, almost like he was disappointed with something. Being the student of the 4th Hokage, I'm actually shocked you'd claim a dujutsu was unbeatable. Naruto said, causing Kakashi's fist to clench. Shut up, you damn brat. Kakashi yelled, while rushing toward Naruto faster than either of the spectators in the trees could track, a kunai in his right hand ready to pierce Naruto's body. The attack missed, since Kakashi's seeming fell through Naruto, who had remained in the same spot, not having even moved in the slightest. Quickly stopping his movement as well, Kakashi turned back to Naruto's still form, which had yet to even turn and face him. Was that a Bunshin no Jutsu? Kakashi thought, as he tried to sense where Naruto was. He was surprised yet again, when the Naruto in front of him seemingly phased out of his sight, before an excruciating pain shot through his side, the source of it being Naruto's elbow. The Sharingan, despite what many will claim, is far from invincible. Naruto said, as he pulled his elbow away from Kakashi, who collapsed to the ground, cradling his ribs which felt like they were broken. You may be able to track fast-moving opponents and movements, but there is a limit to what can be tracked, even to the Sharingan. What, cough? What are you talking about? Kakashi said, while trying to regain his breath. What I'm saying is that not even the Sharingan can keep up with all movements. Naruto replied, before he turned his back to Kakashi. Now, how about you go and test the other 2 members of Team 7? Flashback end. Since that day, not once has Kakashi done a thing to prove he is the best Junin in Konoha. Naruto thought, while ignoring the glares and pinprick ki from Sakura and Sasuke. That baka, I still can't believe what he did to Kakashi. Sakura thought, but what happened to me was so humiliating thanks to him, I'll make him pay for it somehow. Her thoughts continued, remembering the outcome of her encounter with Kakashi during their test. Flashback. Almost instantly after Naruto had said his last piece to Kakashi, multitudes of kunai and shuriken hailed down from the tree line, piercing into Kakashi's kneeling form. However, Kakashi vanished in a poof of smoke, revealing a log which had been completely riddled with the ninja tools. I can't best that brat, not like this, and no doubt the Sandame is keeping an eye on me. Best to test the other 2 on this team, before trying my luck again later. Kakashi thought, while sensing the other 2 members of the potential Team 7 quickly darting through the trees to change position. With Sakura, Sasuke-kun, where are you? Sakura thought, as she tried to move at her best speed through the trees, looking for the person on her mind. I need to find him and cheer him on during his fight with Kakashi-sensei. Sakura suddenly had to stop, and quickly ducked behind the nearest tree to her, while taking a careful glance. I think I wasn't spotted. Sakura thought, letting out a soft sigh of relief, only to freeze up at the next thing to happen. Psst, Sakura, behind you. A familiar voice said from behind her, causing her to turn around and instantly panic at the sight of her Junin teacher right behind her. Her scream of panic could be heard for miles around. Flashback end. I still can't believe I fell for the simplest genjutsu out there. Sakura mentally screamed, her mind automatically pinning the blame on the resident blonde. I swear, I'll make that baka pay for having Kakashi-sensei make a fool of me. That loser thinks he's so cool. Sasuke thought, while Naruto merely rolled his eyes at Kakashi's excuse to the Chunin handing out the missions about their lack of mission activity. I may have lost to Kakashi during the test, but with the lessons I've been getting, he won't be so smudged when I take him down. Flashback. Sasuke, for his part, was cursing his luck at not being able to hit Kakashi with his weapon assault, as well as the fact that Naruto, the supposed loser of their genin class, had managed to actually hurt Kakashi. So, this is where you got to, Sasuke-kun. Kakashi said, as he leaned against a nearby tree, reading a small orange book, with his headband shifted back down to cover his eye. You'd best get ready, cause I will get a bell from you. Sasuke said, while lowering his body down into his family's famous intercepting fist style, a smirk on his face. Alright, let's see what you've got, Kakashi said, while motioning with the hand that wasn't holding his book. Seeing that Kakashi was still reading his book, and not paying much attention to him, Sasuke felt his blood boil in anger, before launching himself wildly at Kakashi. Random kicks and punches filled the air, but each one was flawlessly dodged by the silver-haired Junin, all the while Kakashi's eyes never left the book. Well, I was expecting better, but this I can work with. Kakashi thought, only for his thoughts to stop when he saw Kakashi leap back and his hands began flying through a chain of seals. Wait, that jutsu, surely he can't have enough chakra for an attack like that. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. 1. Sasuke called out, before launching a large fireball towards Kakashi, leaving behind a smoking crater. I guess he should have taken me seriously. Or not. Kakashi's voice rang out, before Sasuke felt a pair of hands grab his legs and pull him into the ground until he was buried up to his neck. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. 2. Kakashi said simply, while Sasuke grunted in effort to pull himself from the ground. I'll admit, you have some skill, but you still have a long way to go. Flashback end. While the three genin were remembering the formation day of their team, Kakashi had finally managed to subdue the argument of the mission designator. After this had been settled, Kakashi turned his gaze to the main wildcard on his team, the only blonde, that returned Kakashi's stony gaze with one of his own. I still say I should have failed this squad, since I don't want him on my team. Kakashi thought, while he continued to hold his staring contest with Naruto. If it wasn't for a loophole that Naruto had found, I know he would have been sent back to the academy. Flashback. After leaving Sasuke buried up to his neck in the ground, Kakashi returned to the main clearing, where he saw that Naruto had yet to move from his spot. Trying to slowly approach the blonde, while suppressing his presence, Kakashi was fully intent on attacking Naruto from the back. But his sneak attempt was stopped when Naruto shifted his head slightly, and gave Kakashi a knowing look. Seeing his only chance of taking out Naruto silently gone, Kakashi raised his head to lift his Hite 8 once again, to show his Sharingan. His hand was stopped, however, by Naruto, who had blurred from Kakashi's line of sight, before reappearing beside the silver-haired Junin, the blonde's hand holding his own in place a few inches from his Hite 8. You wouldn't happen to be a one-trick pony, would you? Naruto commented, an amused tone in his voice. Kakashi's eyes narrowed in anger, as he pulled another kunai from his pouch and swung it at Naruto, who caught the attacking limb by the wrist. Taking the opportunity that had presented itself, Naruto launched his knee upwards, driving into Kakashi's gut, causing the Junin in question to lurch forward, while trying to resist the urge to vomit from the hit. As such, Kakashi was unprepared for the leg heading his way, which launched him clear across the training ground, causing him to smash into the training posts. Beep. Saved by the bell, Kakashi thought, as he tried to regain his breath from the outstanding beating that Naruto had just given him. After a few minutes of recuperating, Kakashi managed to stand up from the ground, and head off into the woods. Moments later, he reappeared with Sakura under one arm, still passed out from the genjutsu, while Sasuke's entire outfit was covered with dirt. After managing to wake Sakura up, during which time Sasuke continued to remove random dirt clumps from his form, Kakashi stood before the three genin. "Well, I've got good news for you three," Kakashi began, while Sakura's eyes widened in anticipation. "You three won't be sent back to the academy," he continued, but before Sakura could whoop for joy, he kept on speaking. "Actually, you three should be dropped from the ninja program completely." "What? Why should we be dropped?" Sakura screamed, while her face once again became as red as her dress. "Because you three don't have the necessary skills to be genin," Kakashi responded, causing Sasuke to react in anger, launching an attack at Kakashi, which the Junin easily countered. The next thing Sasuke knew, he was on his stomach, his left arm pinned behind his back, while Kakashi had a foot placed on his head. "Let Sasuke-kun go," Sakura screamed again, only for Kakashi's glare to freeze her in place. "You think this is just a game, but you don't seem to understand that one mistake can cost you your life," Kakashi said, his voice in a deadly soft tone. "You three didn't even come close to snatching one of the bells, let alone even graze on the true meaning of this test." "Teamwork, right?" Naruto said, drawing the attention of the three other people in the clearing. "It's pretty simple when you think about it. 3 genin against 1 junin. Normally, any genin that tries to fight alone would be crushed, case in point." Naruto finished, while gesturing to Sakura and Sasuke, who both seethed at his words. "And how did you figure that out?" Kakashi asked, suspicion lacing his tone, thinking the blonde, who was supposed to be the dead last of the academy, had somehow cheated in getting the answer. "It's common sense, genius. Any person with half a brain could tell you that any normal genin can't match a junin, so the three need to work together to even have a chance." Naruto shot back, causing Kakashi's visible eye to narrow dangerously. But the curveball was that even though there were only 2 bells, this was also to see if the 3 genin could put aside the possibility of one of them being sent back to the academy. After a moment of silence, during which Kakashi finally stood up and let Sasuke go, while he continued to glare at Naruto, Kakashi finally spoke. "You are correct about that. But, seeing as none of you managed to get even 1 bell, I'm failing all 3 of you." "Well, I wouldn't say that," Naruto commented, while lifting his closed fist, before opening it to show 2 silver bells. Feeling his eyes widen, Kakashi's gaze darted to his hip, as did his hands, only to feel his shock increase when he couldn't find them. Returning his gaze to Naruto, his eyes narrowed in suspicion once again. "And how did you get those?" Kakashi asked. "During that last strike I made at you before you went to test Sakura and Sasuke, I managed to snatch these while you were trying to recuperate," Naruto replied, while smirking at Kakashi's angered expression. "Well, what do you intend to do with those?" Kakashi questioned. Answering it with an action instead of a verbal response, Naruto lazily tossed a belt to Sasuke and Sakura each, while the 2 of them gained surprised expression. "I don't like those 2, but as far as I'm concerned, they might prove to be helpful in the future." Sakura and Sasuke both glared heavily at Naruto, while managing to release a microscopic amount of ki at the blonde, but it was completely ignored. "Fine, I guess Team 7 passes their genin test, but know that you passed only by a technicality and nothing more," Kakashi spat out, while turning his back to the genin. Says the Junin who got his head handed to him by a fresh out of the academy genin. Naruto responded, which caused Kakashi to stop in his tracks, but as the silver-haired Junin turned back to reprimand Naruto, he found the blonde had vanished from his, Sakura's and Sasuke's sight. End flashback. "I've been doing my best to monitor that brat's training, but he's always keeping his skills under wraps during team meetings," Kakashi thought, while noticing that the blonde he was still following from a distance had met up with his pink-haired fiancé. "And that girl, she doesn't seem normal," Kakashi thought, while wondering for the umpteenth time what that strange tale was. Initially, he had shirked it off as being some kind of fashion trend that the girl wore, since he thought her a little odd in the head, but his mind still kept lingering on it. "Naruto-kun, are you free to have some fun?" Lala chirped happily, while happily smooshing Naruto's arm into her generous cleavage. "Yeah," Kakashi decided to end the day with only having 1 D-rank mission. Naruto replied, while chuckling at Lala's happy expression, while she continued to hug his arm. "But I swear, 2 whole months on that team, and that silver-haired Junin hasn't taught us a thing." Naturally, why would I want to teach anything to you, when you killed my sensei? Kakashi thought, while failing to notice Naruto's gaze drift to his spot for a split second. Maybe he's just lazy. Lala offered, which caused Naruto to burst out laughing, while Kakashi's glare increased, and his ki spiked. No doubts there. Naruto responded, which caused another spike in their followers' ki. Ignoring Kakashi's obvious anger, Naruto and Lala finally arrived at their destination, which turned out to be the Hokage's office. Realizing he couldn't follow Naruto any further without risking being found out, Kakashi turned away, instead planning to head out, meet up with Sasuke, and continue the Uchiha's lessons. Hokage's office. Yo, Oji-san, how are things going? Naruto asked, instantly gaining the attention of the elderly Hokage, who was sitting in his chair smoking his pipe, while 4 Bunchins were busy working on the stack of papers on his desk. Oh, Naruto, I'm surprised to see you here. I thought Kakashi said that your team was busy with your mission. Sarutobi responded, while putting out his pipe, and giving Naruto his full attention. We finished up early, and Kakashi decided that we should do our own training alone. Naruto replied, causing Sarutobi to frown. But I don't really mind it, since I'd rather spend time practicing with Lala-chan than with my teammates. Naruto finished, while the last word was said in a sarcastic tone, as Lala smiled at Naruto's comment. Yes, well, even still, I'm sorry. Sarutobi said, while bowing his head slightly. Kakashi was a student of the Yondaime, so I thought he would be able to teach you properly, but I failed to realize he might be bitter toward because of the Kyuubi. It's alright, Oji-san, I don't blame you. Naruto replied. You may have ordered Kakashi to teach Team 7, but even you can't order Kakashi to change his way of thinking. That may be, but I'll straighten him out. Sarutobi said, but Naruto shook his head at the elderly Hokage. It's not going to make a difference. Kakashi believes so blindly that I am the Kyuubi, and not just the container, that nothing will get through to him. Naruto said, while Sarutobi couldn't help but frown in disappointment. Hey, why are you two so gloomy? Lala asked, after seeing both Naruto's and Sarutobi's expressions turn grim. Even without Shippo Kakashi, 3, teaching Naruto-kun, he's still getting stronger with each day. She finished happily, causing Naruto to smile. She's right, I may not be getting any training from Kakashi, but I still have Lala-chan here helping me. Naruto said, causing Sarutobi to smile happily. However, unknown to the elderly Hokage, Naruto had left out the fact that at several times during his training with Lala, Naruto had actually caught Kakashi spying on them. Each time, Naruto had managed to end the fight by some way, either by suggesting lunch or a small break, but it was getting tiresome to have Kakashi watching them as much as he did. Well, I'm happy that you're still making progress, Sarutobi said. Their conversation was suddenly stopped by a new arrival appearing, this one from the window. Sarutobi had immediately thought it was one of his former students, but when he saw it was an unfamiliar face, he began to tense in case it was an assassin. But his worries were soon put to rest very soundly. Zaston, what are you doing here? Lala asked, while showing complete confusion on why the captain of her family's guard had shown up in the Hokage's office. Lala-sama, I came to personally inform you of a new arrival on the ship. Zaston said, while kneeling before Lala in a deep bow. New arrival? Lala questioned, but she never got a response from Zaston. Hey, where do you think you're going? The Hokage's in a meeting. Was heard from outside the office, only for the doors to fly open, revealing another new figure. This one was a male, about the same height as Lala, with snow-white hair covering most of his head, while the back portion was pitch black. Garbing the male's body was a regal set of clothing, but the material was something that didn't appear to have come from this world. Ah, Lala-chan, it's so good to see you again. The male said, as he had seemingly vanished, and reappeared before Lala, while holding one of her hands in both of his, while giving her a smile, his hot pink eyes seemingly shining in happiness. Your radiant beauty shines out so brightly, even in a crowd of people, your magnificence can't be hidden. Who are you? Lala asked, causing the unnamed male to facefault, while Naruto only just managed to suppress a chuckle at this. You don't remember? The male asked, while his eyes began tearing up, before he wiped them away, while clenching his fist as if in some form of anger. But I won't let this get me down. Because At this, he raised his head, his slightly teary eyes returning to Lala. I'm a man, he finished confidently. And I thought my teammates were weird. Naruto thought. Note to self. Keep this person away from Maida Guy. Sarutobi mentally advised himself, since he had a feeling if Konoha's resident taijutsu master ever met this young boy, all hell would break loose. Well, maybe this will remind you of our intimate relationship. The male responded, while pulling out a photograph from a pocket on the inside of his shirt, before showing it to Lala, while Naruto and Sarutobi also got a look at it. In the picture, it showed a much younger version of Lala, and the young male, somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 6 or 7 years old. Both of them were wearing female clothes, Lala having a pink on black dress, with a strange head ornament shaped like bat wings, while the male had a green dress with a frilly apron over the top, and green bow in his hair. Ah, now I remember. You're Cry Baby Ren, Lala suddenly said, while recognition dawned on her about the person's identity. Ah, I'm glad you remembered me, Ren said, while brushing a bang of hair from his face. Yes, Lala-sama, I was on my way here to inform you of that, but I guess Ren Dono decided to take matters into his own hands. Zaston said, while Naruto gazed back at Zaston. Guess he's not exactly the patient type. Naruto commented while Zaston nodded his head. Lala-chan, now that I've found you, I must confirm something. Ren said, once again drawing the attention of the other 4 people in the room to himself. Is it true that you intend to marry a person from this primitive planet? Instead of waiting for any kind of an answer, Ren began speaking once again. But Lala-chan, have you forgotten the promise we made? A promise? Naruto asked, while turning to look at Zaston, who shrugged his shoulders showing he didn't know anything about it. Yes, she made a beautiful promise to me. Ren replied, while thinking back to the day. Flashback. Lala, if I become manly enough, will you marry me? Ren asked Lala, who was working on a piece of machinery in front of her, and wasn't really paying much attention to who was speaking or what was being said. If it happens, sure. She replied, while never giving him a single glance. Flashback end. Lala-sama, is he telling the truth? Peek asked, while Lala's expression was pensive. No clue. Lala responded. But, I can't forgive the person trying to steal your heart. Ren declared. It's you, Naruto Uzumaki. Ah, no, that's not me. Sarutobi responded, since he was the person Ren had pointed toward. Then it's you, Ren said, while pointing toward Naruto, while the blonde gave an annoyed expression in response. 1 for 2, nice odds. Naruto commented to himself. So, you are the one who has stolen Lala-chan's heart. Ren said, while staring at Naruto. Well, I'll just have to prove to her, which of us is better for her. Later, Naruto's training ground. So, same rules as always Lala-chan? Naruto asked, as he finished his stretches, while Lala was just about done with hers. Okay, she chirped happily, before standing up and walking toward Naruto. Give it your all, Naruto-kun. Right, I will, Naruto said, while taking a stance. Hold it, Ren suddenly shouted, while rapidly running up and putting himself between Naruto and Lala. And just what do you think you were going to do? Ren asked, with his arms crossed, while Lala was staring at him in curiosity. Just a little sparring. Lala-chan's about the only one outside of Zaston that can give me a good match. Naruto responded, while noticing a confident smirk appeared on Ren's face. Well, I guess you won't mind if I try my luck at sparring with you. Ren said, if I can show Lala how easily I take him down, she'll see I'm so manly. Ren thought, while his mind went over a scenario that showed Lala happily cheering on Ren as he beat Naruto, while she finally admitted he was manly. I don't think that's such a good idea, Naruto said, while glancing at Lala, who had a happy smile on her face. Yay, Naruto-kun and Ren-chan are gonna spar. Lala happily cried, while her eyes were sparkling in anticipation. Well, Naruto Uzumaki, shall we start? Ren asked, while he clenched his hands into fist. I still think this is a bad idea. Naruto finally conceded, while resuming his previous stance. Here I come, Ren cried, while rushing toward Naruto, fist raised, ready to drive into the blonde's head and show Lala just how good he was. The attack sailed through open air as Naruto ducked under the punch, before launching a palm strike at Ren's unguarded stomach. Stopping the palm from landing an inch or so from Ren's body, The blow still had enough force to successfully launch Ren backwards a good 5 or 6 feet, while simultaneously causing the two-toned-haired boy to drop to one knee. What? Ren asked, while holding his stomach, which even though it had escaped the hit, had still felt quite a bit of pressure from it. That's why I said this was a bad idea. Lala, being a Devolukian, can withstand any physical attack I may land on her, but you aren't so lucky. Naruto said, while standing up and walking toward Ren. Holding out a hand, Naruto motioned for Ren to take it. So, I think we should call it quits at that. Naruto's hand was roughly pushed away, while Ren stood back to his feet, determination shining in his eyes. Don't think I'm beaten yet, Naruto Uzumaki. I will win this spar and show Lala just how manly I am. Ren called out, while throwing another punch to Naruto, but it was deflected by the person it had been aimed at. Damn, I used too much. Naruto mentally cursed at the fact that when he had deflected Ren's attack, he had accidentally sent the other male flying across the clearing and into one of the surrounding trees. Ah, Naruto-kun, you're so strong. Lala cried happily. Suddenly, a new sound was heard across the clearing, which then resulted in a large cloud of smoke bursting from the scene where Ren had just been launched to. Was that a sneeze? Naruto asked, but he didn't wait for an answer, instead quickly floating over to the area where Ren had landed. He stopped and stared in shock, since now in place of where Ren should be was a young woman with light green hair reaching down to about mid-back, while she was wearing the exact same clothes that Ren had on, though since she was much smaller in frame, they showed off a lot of skin. What the? Ah, Run-chan, Lala suddenly said, instantly gaining Naruto's attention. A few minutes later, ah, so Ren was an alien from the planet Mamors? Naruto asked, while Run's head was placed in his lap, as his hands, which were glowing with a soft white energy, were healing the damage that had been inflicted. Hi, and a special quality of their race is that they have the ability to switch forms when a specific condition is met. This change will then switch the person's body and mind, from a male to a female or vice versa. Peak explained, while Lala was sitting across from Naruto. Geez, if I had known that beforehand, I would have never agreed to that spar in the first place. Naruto commented, while noticing that the girl he was healing had begun to stir from her sleep. Ah, Run-chan, are you okay? Lala asked, while getting close to Run. Ow, my head. The green-haired girl responded, while lifting a hand to rub her head, only for her hand to bump into another in its path. Opening her eyes, she soon found her own hot pink ones looking back into a pair of soft sky blue ones. Yeah, that one was my bad, Naruto said, while smiling at her, causing her cheeks to brighten with a red tinge. WWW, who are you? Run managed to stutter out, while Naruto finished up his business and removed his hands from Run's head. Name's Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto responded, while Run sat up from her spot, and kept her gaze locked on Naruto. He's my fiancé, Lala added in, while glomping herself onto Run, who regarded Lala with a surprised expression. Oh, Lala-chan, it's you, Run said, while happily smiling at Lala. While it had been a known fact that Lala had often used Ren and Run for some of her experiments when they were young, Run had also noticed that at some point, Lala had seemingly calmed down on that regard. But the greenette had never actually managed to figure out what had caused this change in her pink-haired friend, but she was grateful for it all the same. Wait, fiancé? Yeah, that happened around 8 years ago, and it was mostly my fault. Naruto elaborated, while sheepishly scratching the back of his head. Oh, Run responded, while lowering her head to try and hide the blush that was still on her face. He's kinda cute. Suddenly realizing her train of thought, Run turned her blushing face away from Naruto while mentally berating. Wait, he's Lala-chan's fiancé, so. Hey, you okay? Naruto asked, while waving a hand in front of her face. Returning her gaze back to Naruto, while doing her best to keep the blush off of her face, Run regarded him with a smile. Yes, I'm feeling just fine, Run said, which caused Naruto to stand up and hold out a hand toward her and Lala. Well, at least that proves I've got that healing technique down, Naruto commented, while pulling first Lala to her feet, then doing the same for Run. But the attempt was thwarted when he foot caught a piece of root that had been uprooted by Naruto and Lala's sparring match the other day. Knowing she was about to hit the ground again, Run braced for the impact, but it never came. Instead, she felt her body pressed up against another person's body, a very muscled body to be precise. Lifting her gaze, Run found herself gazing into Naruto's face again. "You okay?" Naruto asked, which caused Run's face to blush heavily once again. "Hi," she said, while managing to steady herself on her own 2 feet. Hearing Lala make a suggestion for their actual training to start, Run excused herself and went to sit beside one of the trees in the area, while watching Naruto and Lala warm up. "He's so kind." However, Run's thoughts were instantly stopped from that pattern when she saw Naruto and Lala begin sparring, their blows echoing through the surrounding area. Her eyes widened in shock when Naruto dodged over one of Lala's kicks and continued to float in the air, while Lala's outfit grew black wings to take off after him. "That's unbelievable," Run thought, while seeing their match was only getting more and more intense, as the speed and power behind the punches continued to pick up. However, after a while, Run seemingly realized that maybe Naruto wasn't as normal as she had initially thought, so she let it go from her worries. Sometime later, "Good workout, Lala-chan," Naruto said, while landing back on the ground, Lala doing the same next to him. Suddenly, a towel was handed to him, and turning to see how, Naruto was surprised to see Run was the one holding it out, while her other arm had one for Lala as well. "Here Naruto-kun, I thought you could use this," she said happily while smiling at him. Thanks, Run-chan," Naruto said, while graciously accepting the towel and wiping the sweat from his face. "I know he's Lala-chan's fiancé, but," Run thought, while seeing Naruto had begun speaking to Lala about their match, and also on ways to improve on any mistakes they made. "I just can't shake the want to get to know him," she finished. Naruto-kun," Run said suddenly. "Eh?" Naruto asked, before he noticed that Run was poking her index fingers together slightly, while regarding her feet more than anything else. "Run-chan, you need something? Well, I was hoping, if it's not too much trouble," she said, while she began to fidget slightly. "Would you let me practice with you and Lala-chan?" For a moment, Naruto didn't respond, which caused Run to mentally berate herself for jumping the gun and asking. But he soon shook of the surprise, and smiled back at her. "I don't see any problem with that," Naruto responded, causing Run to instantly lift her head up and give Naruto a shocked look. "Granted, you'll have to start out slowly before you can spar against Lala or myself at full strength, but we'd be happy to have you join us." "Really?" Run asked, while glancing toward Lala again. "Yay, Run-chan can play with us too," Lala happily chirped, while pulling Run and Naruto into a hug, which both of them laughed at. 2 weeks later. "Alright, Team 7, reporting in for their daily mission," Kakashi said, while not once glancing up from his little orange book. "Well, glad to see your team finally made it in, Kakashi," a different voice said, causing Kakashi to actually look away from his book for a moment, only to jump slightly in shock at seeing the Sandaime Hokage being the one to have spoken. SS Sandaime-sama, you honor us with your presence," Kakashi said, while saluting the Hokage, but mentally, he was cursing his luck at seeing the elderly Kage there. "Yes, well, I was just on my way back from a nice lunch with Naruto's fiancée, Lala-chan, when I decided to drop by and check on the mission logs for the new teams. Imagine my surprise when I saw that your team has only done a total 60 D-ranked missions, when the other 3 teams have done 3, if not 4, times that many," Sarutobi said, while regarding the silver-haired Junin with a cold look, while Kakashi began to sweat under the Sandaime's gaze. "Naruto-kun," Lala cried happily, appearing from behind the Sandaime, before tackling the blonde, while his 2 teammates glared at the girl angrily. "Lala-chan," Naruto happily responded, as he managed to sit up and return her hug. "Naruto, show some decency. We don't need you and your girlfriend hugging each other in front of the Sandaime," Kakashi tried to say, hoping that by reprimanding Naruto, the Sandaime would shift his attention to Naruto and forget about him. "Actually, I would be more concerned if Naruto didn't respond to this situation. Besides, I'm still waiting for an explanation on why your Genin team has only done the bare minimums on missions," Sarutobi countered, while noticing Kakashi recoil. "Well, Sandaime-sama, you see, it was my intent to try and get this team functioning as a proper squad, so we've been doing team coordination each day," Kakashi said, hoping that the Hokage would buy the excuse. "And yet, their mission reports state that only one person ever works on the mission, and that is Naruto," Sarutobi said, while noticing Kakashi narrow his visible eye at the blonde in question. "Kakashi, I'm giving you one chance," Sarutobi began, instantly drawing the silver-haired Junin's attention. "I'll give you one more mission. If after this mission is done, your team still hasn't met the requirements of the mission, your team will be disbanded, and you will be called into question about your teaching skills, as well as your competence as a Junin of this village." "Hi, Hokage-sama," Kakashi said, while moving forward to pick out a mission, preferably an easy one. "But, I'm not letting you choose the mission," Sarutobi said, instantly halting Kakashi in his tracks. "Since the only person on this team that has shown any competence as a shinobi is Naruto, I'll be allowing him to choose a mission." "But Hokage-sama," Kakashi began, but his complaint was stopped dead in its tracks. "That's an order from your Hokage," Sarutobi said dangerously. "Alright, let's see," Naruto said, before noticing a scroll on the table that caught his eye. "Oh, I think I've chosen," Naruto said, while reaching for the scroll. "Wait, Naruto, that's a C-rank mission, I don't think you're ready for that," Iruka said, while holding up a hand to try and forestall Naruto. "Oh, come on, Oji-san, back me up here," Naruto said, while looking toward Sarutobi. Kakashi looked close to reprimanding Naruto again for his lack of respect to the Hokage, but a single look from Sarutobi stopped him. "I don't know, Naruto. I have confidence in your skills, but I'm not sure your team is ready for a C rank just yet," Sarutobi said, while Naruto's expression turned disheartened. "Oh, can I come?" Lala popped in, scaring the few people who had forgotten about her, i.e. everyone. "Lala-chan, you sure you want to come?" Naruto asked, which she happily nodded her head to. "Well, you think this could convince you, Oji-san?" "Well," Sarutobi said, while mentally going over the options. "If I don't agree to this, I'll more than likely have to dismantle Team 7, which will then cause quite a few problems with the councils. But, if I do okay this mission, I'll get a slight reprieve from Kakashi's tardiness and lame excuses." "Very well, I'll approve this mission. Also, I'm authorizing Lala Dono to accompany you, but Kakashi, know that she will not be under your command. In this case, she'll be a free agent, answering only to herself and Naruto." "Hokage-sama, please, do you really trust this girl to be able to handle herself?" Kakashi tried to argue. "Yeah, I bet she'll break a nail and come running back to the village crying." Sakura decided to chime in. "Sakura, I suggest you remember how bad you were beaten by Lala-chan, before you go shooting your mouth off." Naruto replied coldly, causing Sakura's screeching laughter to stop, and her screeching yells to start. Or would have, had the Hokage not intervened again. "That's enough. Your team has been assigned this mission," Sarutobi said loudly, instantly stopping all arguments. "Bring in their client." Several moments later, the doors to the conference room opened, revealing an elderly man wearing a sleeveless V-neck shirt, with a towel draped along his shoulders, and a bottle of sake in his hands. "Hey, this is my protection?" The silver-haired guy looks like a former masked wrestler, and the kids look like brats, he commented after taking a swig of his booze, before his eyes landed on Lala. "Oh, but this one looks like a real keeper," he said, while leering at her, only to freeze at the spiking key aimed at him by none other than Naruto. "Unless you want to be walking to your destination with a few broken limbs, I suggest you keep your comments to yourself," Naruto stated coldly, which caused not only the elderly man, but also his teammates to shiver. Anyways, I'm the super bridge builder, Tazuna, and I expect you to give me super protection until I'm done with my bridge." Tazuna managed to stutter out. "Now that you know about the mission, you can meet at the East Gate in 2 hours," Sarutobi said, causing Kakashi, Sasuke, Sakura and Tazuna to leave the room, while Naruto turned his attention to Sarutobi. "By the by, Oji-san, do you think you could do me one other small favor?" Naruto asked, instantly gaining the elderly Hokage's attention. "That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments."